Welcome in, bases dropped. Soccer Down here, PM edition, Saturday night. Anything can happen. It's not a power hour. I don't know what it is. We'll see what happens. There's a lot of stuff to talk about today and this evening, and I'm sure more will happen as we go. We're already starting to see some crazy things in the NWSL world, so we'll get into that. Americans have been feasting in Europe, according to D. Graham, and he would be correct. Shooter McGavin is telling us not to pick the Revs because he doesn't need a jinx. He's back to that side of the barn. We'll see, Shooter. We haven't gotten there yet. We'll see what happens. Domer's in a good mood, I'm sure, after Chelsea's big win over Leeds. You sound upset about this?
Well, no, I was going with a college football version of Domer. I thought that's where you were going.
Oh, no, we were talking soccer because the show's called Soccer Down Here, John Nelson.
But the college football version was either simultaneous or started early and gave him reason to change over to Leeds and Chelsea.
Now I can't pick Chelsea either, Domer, so now I'm a jinx is what you're telling me. I've been told by multiple people in the chat room I'm already a jinx. Great. Good times on a Saturday night. We'll see where this goes. This is going to get out of hand. All right, we got lots of stuff to get into. Y'all can ask whatever questions you want. We'll get into that. We'll talk about the games of the day. Kind of run through, I guess, where things stand at the moment. We got a lot to talk about with Columbus and New England. We got a lot to talk about with Gabriel Heinze. We got a lot to talk about with U.S. soccer. We've got games. We've got an IFAB potential law change as well to talk about, which is very interesting. We'll get into that. Games from today. Bayern and RB Leipzig. Watch the highlights. It's absolutely worth it. 3-3. Madness. Thomas Mueller scored twice. Bayern is still on top. 2 points ahead of Leipzig. 4 points ahead of Borussia Dortmund. Dortmund got a draw at Eintracht Frankfurt. Thank you, Badgermon. And we got an emote. And I am thanking you right now. You are awesome. Germany, that game was madness. It was on all of the Hefeweizen you could possibly find. Good stuff. It's definitely worth checking out. I mean, it's wide open madness. Italy, Inter, 3-1 win. Good for them. They've won 3 this week. So maybe Antonio Conte's job is not in trouble. They're second in the table, 21 points from 10 games, 2 behind Milan, who play tomorrow. Juventus, not good for most of it, but the second half was good. Weston McKennie scored an equalizer. They got 2 goals in the last 15 minutes to come from behind and beat Torino in the derby. Andrea Pirlo was not happy with the first half at all. He said they didn't manage to be aggressive, to dribble, and especially to move the ball around quickly, so it became difficult. We were too static. We never penetrated the area, and that made it difficult to find a way past a 5-man defense. So in the second half, we changed gear. Our DNA is to put a lot of heart, a lot of intensity, and we put it in the second half, creating a lot. Got to start better. Got to also keep people out of jail. Juve might have that problem. We'll dig into that here in a little bit. Going all the way back to the Luis Suarez stuff that we mentioned yesterday, but is now ensnaring Juventus front office staff. Mario Balotelli's got some more to play. We'll talk about that today. That's craziness. We're going to move into La Liga, where Zinedine Zidane reportedly could have been fired if they had lost today. They did not. They needed an own goal not to lose. They won 1-0. Barcelona did lose to Cadiz. Barca up, down, all over the place, as usual. These are some of the things coming out of that loss to Cadiz. Let's start on the good side for Cadiz. The first newly promoted team to defeat the 3 historic teams, the 3 teams that have never been relegated, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Athletic Bilbao. Cadiz did that. Last time anybody did that was 1981-82. Cadiz beat Barcelona for the first time since a 4-0 win in 1991. Ronald Koeman was on the field for Barcelona that day. Now let's go to the bad stuff. Barcelona is in their worst start in La Liga since 1988. They finished 6th that year. It is the worst they have started since you actually got 3 points for a win. Yeah, I know, olden times. They are 7th place on 14 points. It's a very tight table. Yes, they're not too far out of a Champions League spot, but they're also only 4 points clear of being in a relegation slot. 4. They would have the tiebreakers if they were 3 points, because the last relegation spot's actually on 11, but they would have tiebreakers on that on goal differential. Kike Setien can't get paid, but in his 20 league games in charge, Barcelona lost 3 times. In Ronald Koeman's 7 La Liga matches in charge, Barcelona's lost 4 times. Ronald Koeman managing in La Liga. He was at Valencia last as well. 32 matches, 16 losses. Not good. Atleti continues on. They have been very, very good defensively this year. 2 goals conceded in 10 games. The joint lowest figure at this stage of the season ever, alongside Deportivo La Coruña in 1993. Let's move to England. Domer's happy. Chelsea got the win 3-1. They had to come from behind. They conceded first in the 4th minute to Patrick Bamford. Giroud, Zuma, and Pulisic off the bench gets the goal. 4.1 was the XG. That was the highest XG for a team in a Premier League game this season. They also had some fans in the stands. Not a lot, but they did have some fans in the stands. West Ham had some fans in the stands. They maybe wish they had been somewhere else. They had a 1-0 lead. They ended up losing 3-1. Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford got goals for Manchester United. They flipped the script. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has kind of had that ability at times to have the halftime subs get the script being flipped and get comeback wins. England was the first of the major countries, major leagues, to have fans back in the stands today. It's limited. It's by location. There were some that did not have fans in the stands. Manchester City, Fulham, no fans in the stands. 2-0 win for Manchester City. Very comfortable. France, PSG. Moise Kean, who's been maybe one of the revelations this season. 5 goals in 7 Liga appearances. PSG 3-1 win. They're 4 points up on the table. One of the crazy stories before we jump into the Atlanta United coaching search goes to the Netherlands, and it's on the coaching side. Arne Slot was the manager at AZ. AZ had a 1-1 draw with Napoli in Europa League on Thursday. He was fired on Saturday. He was linked to the Feyenoord job for next season. AZ is unbeaten in the Dutch league right now. They're probably going to get to the last 32 in the Europa League. Dutch media reported he was the favorite to get the job at Feyenoord. Dick Advocaat is going to step down. He's 73 years old. He said this was his last season in charge. The Dutch media reported that Slot was the Feyenoord choice to take over. They talked to Slot about this, and I guess they didn't like what they heard, because Feyenoord, or AZ, said, as a club, we have elected for an immediate departure. At AZ, we want a head coach who is fully focused on AZ. Okay, we'll see how this goes for them. We'll see if Feyenoord will wait. Last time I remember something like this happening was the Lopetegui situation, where he was at Spain in Russia for the World Cup a couple days out. The reports come out about him going to Real Madrid after the World Cup. Spain said, why don't you go ahead and go now? We'll have somebody else take over the World Cup. It didn't go very well there. It didn't go very well for Lopetegui at Real Madrid. He's not even there anymore. We'll see what happens in the Netherlands. All right. On the Atlanta United side, this broke last night. Cesar Luis Merlo, who we were kind of waiting to see if he would chime in on this. He brought it back up because it had not been mentioned in Argentine media since November 23rd. But Gabriel Heinze, according to Cesar Luis Merlo, is close. Is he a step away? Whatever the translation is going to be, to becoming Atlanta United's new manager. Teise had a follow-up report that Heinze had spoken to Javier Mascherano about joining the staff. There's some back and forth depending on where you read it. Teise implied that Mascherano had declined that opportunity. Others said it was still being considered. it's now spread around everywhere. Clarín has had a report. It's all kind of following up on the basic reporting that Merlo and Hugo Balasone had from TIC. Marca in this hemisphere has also reported on it. It's pretty much everywhere. MLSsoccer.com's had an article. Doug Robertson's had a follow-up. It is now an official rumor, I think is the fair way to put it. After the Doble Amarilla piece that didn't go anywhere for a while, and there's some questions about why it hasn't gone anywhere, and I think it's a valid question. I don't know. I don't know if the Racing possibility did kind of get in the way, and it was a little bit of let's see what happens there first. There's also been some questions about why Atlanta United has waited, and Transfermarkt had an article, and they were the first ones to mention this. And I don't know if it's accurate or not. It kind of sounds a little strange that Heinze had a contract through the end of 2020. That part's not strange, even though the Argentine season does overlap. A lot of contracts, a lot of things are calendar year in Argentina. You see a lot of players whose contracts are up at the end of the year. But he left. He walked away from Vélez. Why would his contract still matter unless they didn't want to release him in terms of being available? I don't think they were still paying him after he left. That doesn't seem to make any sense. So I don't know if they could have stopped if he had wanted to go ahead and come to Atlanta. I'm not 100% sure of that reporting from Transfermarkt. Could be valid, could just be the release area. I don't know. He was linked to Marseille in the summer. That ultimately did not happen for him. It went to Andres Villas-Boas. He was linked to Palmeiras. Reportedly, Heinze turned that down. That's what we know so far. Lots of excitement, lots of conversation about Gabriel Heinze, lots of fire emojis on Atlanta United Twitter, and we'll see what happens next. Some reports have it as he could be announced next week. It feels a little quick. It feels a little odd with the CONCACAF game coming up, but anything's possible at this point as the coaching carousel is spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. What'd you think when this broke last night? I know you were a little busy, but you were seeing this happen on Twitter.
Yeah, and obviously I got to see the fire emojis and the excitement, and what I would like to propose to the floor, and this is not just for tonight, but for future shows, and it's a question that you brought to the floor, is I would like to know, it's like, okay, so there's a fire emoji associated with a particular person and the Heinze idea. Why? Why are you posting that fire emoji? Why are you feeling the way you feel, good, bad, indifferent, waiting? That's what I'd like to pose once again to the SDH universe. Why are you feeling the way that you feel about Gabriel Heinze? And as I was kind of buzzing through, looking at high school football scores and seeing what's going on with Atlanta United Twitter, it's like I got to see less than 280 characters. What I'd like to see going forward now with this out here is the why. To get into a little more of the ideas behind why folks feel the way that they do. So that's the biggest thing that I would like to bring to the table tonight, is hearing from everyone else as to why you feel about Heinze the way that you do.
Well, let's run through a little bit of an introduction. I think maybe some people are familiar with elements of his story, and others are familiar with all of it, and others are familiar with none of it. You're talking about a legendary Argentine defender, born in Argentina. Mother is Italian, father is German, obviously from the name. Started his career at Newell's Old Boys, moved to Spain with Valladolid, spent some time on loan at Sporting Lisbon, broke out as a full-fledged pro at PSG from 2001 to 2004, moved to Manchester United from 2004 to 2007, angled for a move to Liverpool, and that didn't happen. There was a lot of friction with him and Manchester United at that time. Ended up going to Real Madrid. Not a bad fallback. 2 years there, then went to Marseille for 2 years. One more year in Europe at Roma before returning to Newell's Old Boys in 2012. Played for Tata Martino at Newell's Old Boys. Won a league title, semifinals of the Copa Libertadores. Retired in 2014. 72 caps for Argentina, gold medal in 2004 Olympics with Marcelo Bielsa, played in the 2006 and 2010 World Cups. When he retired, didn't really know what he wanted to do, ultimately went into management, started with Godoy Cruz as he was still getting his coaching badges. Only 10 games there because of the lack of badges. He wasn't able to be on the bench. He wasn't even able to be involved in all the training sessions. Different rules about coaching badges and certifications in Argentina, very strange. Didn't go well in 10 days. He left, or 10 games, and he left. Argentinos Juniors in 2016-17 in the Primera B Nacional, second division. 1 year there, 44 matches. He won the second division, 25 wins, 6 losses, 13 draws. 61 goals scored in 44 matches, 24 goals allowed. Really good defensively, good attacking team. Turned a lot of heads with that team. Left at the end of that year. Some disputes with the board, et cetera, et cetera. Took a break. Then took over at Vélez during the summer break in Argentina, like right around now. I think it was actually right around now in 2017 when he got the job at Vélez. Didn't do his first game with Vélez until January of 18. So he took over for the second half of the year, went on a 7-2-6 run to finish that year out. They scored 22 goals, gave up 19 in that run as he was kind of correcting some issues. There's been some reporting that Vélez was close to relegation or in a relegation spot when he took over. That's not true. The way Argentina does their table, the Promedios, and at least until they stopped relegation for now, when they did the Promedios, it was over a 3-year period of time. And Vélez had one bad year that dragged their number down a little bit, but they were a pretty comfortable couple of tenths away from relegation spots. They weren't at massive risk. Now, if they had not made a coaching change, had not brought him in, if they'd continued down that road, they would have been at risk, but not in the same kind of risk that we think about in terms of a bad year and you're screwed. It's over a 3-year period. So he has that good run to finish the year. They're saved. They're comfortable. They got knocked out in the Copa Argentina in July of 18 going into the next season. 2018-19, they finished 6th place, and that was a big jump. 11-7-7 for the year, scored 34 goals, conceded 25. That 6th place finish got them into the Copa Sudamericana. The Copa de la Superliga in 2019, they won the round of 16 game. They lost in the quarterfinal. 2 legs, scoreless on aggregate with Boca, lost on penalties. So then you go into the 2019-20 Superliga season, moved up from 6th to 3rd place, 11-6-6. Fewer games because they were trying to get the league down to 20 teams. They're ultimately not going to do that because welcome to Argentina. But you played everybody once in the league, and then it was an extended cup kind of season was what was set to happen. They won 3 of their final 4 to get into that 3rd place spot. They went 4-2-2 in their final 8. He announced that he was stepping down 3 days before the final match of the season. Didn't want to go into reasons why he was leaving at that time. Vélez was in the midst of some leadership changes. When he left, and it's a little awkward to say that he qualified for Sudamericana twice because the current competition will affect where everything finishes. Because what was about to happen after the league season ended and it was ultimately canceled was another cup, and it was like a miniature league, and that's what they're doing now. So they are right now in a Sudamericana spot coming out of the season. They could actually get into the Copa Libertadores spot if things go well with the cup and how everything plays out. And he would have a huge hand in that. So he's got 1 trophy, 2nd division title with Argentinos Juniors. He's got 2 full seasons in the 1st division, half of a season at Vélez. And the 10 games at Godoy Cruz, you can kind of push that to the side. Teams have been very, very good defensively. And not because they're sitting back and defending deep. They've been very, very good defensively because they've been very aggressive defensively. This past season, they conceded 14 goals in 23 matches. The attack has been not great at times. I think the way he wants to play promotes an attacking style. I don't know if he's necessarily had a number 9 like he could have here in Atlanta with Josef Martinez. Only 27 goals in 23 matches in the league last season. It's not a lot, but when you're that good defensively, you go 11-6-6. They play to play in the other team's half. They play to possess the ball when they have it. They play to win the ball back quickly. They play a very aggressive defensive style, very high up the pitch, reminiscent of Matias Almeida in a lot of ways, with the 1v1 kind of nature of how things shape out. That can concede to mistakes and goals given up, but as you see, his teams have been very well drilled and haven't had many of those. I'm very interested to see how the style works with a player like Joseph up top, because he hasn't had a number 9 like that during his time at Vélez. The best player he had at Vélez was a player that he had on loan, not this past season, but the season before, who got 7 goals for him in the season in 25 league matches. Last season, it was goal scoring by committee, and there wasn't a ton. It's not that his teams don't create chances. It's definitely a question of the level of talent he's had up front. There's going to be a lot of questions. I want to jump into them now. People have commented on the Twitch pitch. Is there anything from that, John, that you had questions about, from just the basics on who he is and what he's done so far in his career?
No, I mean, I think that in the discussions that we have had previously about Heinze and with the digging that I had done, I had taken that first stretch of that 10-match stretch, and I had put that off to the side and was focused on stops after that one when it came to what we were looking at when you're looking at wins and losses and time and positions and things like that. I had taken that 10-game stretch and I had pushed it off to the side as just part of his history, but not indicative of what he has done as a manager. And so you mentioned Joseph, and a question down the line that we could pose or something like that would be, who else, with what we've seen with Heinze, who else could benefit, or who else for that we have seen in an Atlanta United jersey could folks look forward to flourishing in something like this? So those would be stuff that we could look at down the line, but I know folks have questions.
Badgermon says, I'm not so convinced. There seems to be a part of the fan base who thinks that the manager must be Argentinian. What about Vieira? And Badger is a Tottenham fan, full disclosure. Vieira was fired at Nice. Good season for them last year. Not so good this season. Similarities in that his teams so far at Nice were very good defensively, struggled at times to find goals. Last year they scored more goals, but they conceded more. Go back to his New York City teams. They scored a good bit, but they conceded a good bit. They conceded more than a goal a game, a pretty healthy bit more than a goal a game. When I look back at the New York City teams after Jason Kreis's year, so you look at Vieira's 2.5 years and you look at Dome Tarrant's 1.5 years, I think they were better under Dome Tarrant. I think they would not have been as good as they were without the work of Patrick Vieira. I think he really built a foundation. Vieira, like Dome, were from the Pep Guardiola school in different ways. Vieira had other elements, obviously, that impact the way he sees the game. Arsene Wenger, obviously for a long period of time, manager for him. He was in the Manchester City program before he came to New York. Dome was Pep's right-hand man for a large portion of Pep Guardiola's career, and they see the game in the same way. Vieira compared to Heinze, honestly, a good bit of similarities in what they've done so far. You could compare third place in Argentina to, sixth last year for Nice. And is that comparable, Argentine League versus French League? I think it is. I think the French League outside of PSG is not head and shoulders above the Argentine League. Vélez punched above their weight to finish third. They're not a massive club. They're not one of the 5 grandes in Argentina, but they're a club that has won things. it's comparing the two, and is there a portion of the fan base that's all in on Heinze? Absolutely. And that's why I keep asking why. And I hope it's not just down to the country, because that should not make a difference. I mean, man, if we're talking about like being a booster for Argentine soccer, hello, that's kind of what we've done on the show from day one, because that's one of my touchstones. And, there's boring defensive managers in Argentina. There's boring teams in Argentina. It's not like just because he's an Argentine manager, everything's fine. No, I mean, that's just not true. There's exciting managers from all over the world, and there's boring managers from all over the world. I don't think Vieira or Heinze are boring. I think Heinze has more upside because he has a shorter career right now. So I don't think we've seen everything from him yet. I think Vieira will have a fine career too. I don't think 2.5 years at Nice where he got them into the Europa League and had a little bit of a setback this year and a crazy year. I don't think that's a black mark on his coaching CV. I don't. I think he'll be just fine. I think Heinze is one who could take a big leap here. We don't know if that'll happen. There's no way to know that. He has not managed at a club with the expectations that Atlanta United has. And I know there are people who would laugh at that and say, well, it's Argentina, there's expectations. Vélez didn't go into the year expecting to win a trophy. And I think Atlanta will, because that's the nature of the club so far. I think Heinze is going to need some patience from the fan base. And that's my one concern with what I'm seeing so far, in that he's a slam dunk. There's no question about it. The soccer he's played has been outstanding. His teams have been outstanding. There's nothing that could go wrong here. He's going to need an adjustment period. He's going to need time. He's never managed outside of Argentina. He's never managed at a club with the expectation Atlanta has. He's never managed in a league like MLS. Every manager has come in and had issues sustaining things over a year in MLS because it is different. I will be very curious to see what the reactions are if he is the manager and if it is a slow start, which would not be a crazy thing to happen. Not at all. If he's the guy, you have to preach patience because this is a big step up for him. And he only has, 44 games at Argentinos Juniors. He has 25 and 23, 48 games in 2 full seasons at Vélez, plus another half year. You're not talking about a ton of experience here. So this is a big move for him. And I think a lot of people expected that the big move would be after he resigned at Vélez would be to be in Europe the start of this season. Well, the start of the season got pushed back. Everything went crazy. Like a week after he announced he was stepping down at Vélez, things changed. And I think it's good for him if this is the step for him to get back into work. He doesn't have, mention Max Allegri, for example. Max Allegri's got titles upon titles upon titles. He hasn't worked in a little while. You're not hearing his name a lot.
Right.
With these potential merry-go-rounds spinning in Europe, you're hearing about Mauricio Pochettino a whole lot more than Max Allegri. Max Allegri's got a whole lot more trophies than Mauricio Pochettino. But it's been a minute for him. For a younger manager, you don't want to sit and wait too long for that next job. It didn't work out for him at Marseille to get that job. Another European job didn't fall for Heinze. So get back into it and go to a place that has been a launching pad. So I think the dots are connecting pretty well. But he's a young manager, and it's a different kind of hire than Atlanta's had in the past. And it might take him a minute to get used to the potential travel, to get used to the different climates, to get used to turf. To get used to so many different things that will affect how he trains, how his teams work day to day. Got to give him a little bit of time, and I worry about how excited, how many fire emojis we're seeing.
Right.
That the patience won't be there because the expectation's so high. He has the potential to come to Atlanta, win trophies because he's going to have one of the most talented teams in the league, and move on to a big job. And I think that's the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, too. That's been the other thing that I've seen a lot of is, well, he might only be here for 2 years, and there's reports that it would be a 2-year deal. Okay, that's fine. This is a club that will continually reload, not rebuild. And if they feel like he's the guy who can win trophies in 2 years in Atlanta and then move on to success, which grows the brand, grows what Atlanta United is, and then they can go get somebody new, that's the way it's going to go. And that's okay. You see a lot of clubs that change things up every 2-3 years. You'd love at some point, potentially, if it's the right person and the right fit, for somebody to last longer. It's not a necessity. Not in the modern game anymore. It's not. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I know that some folks yesterday were drawn to something that Jason Lemieux put out in his Twitter feed. It was the words of Sir Alex Ferguson and Roy Keane about Heinze. And it was, and here's the quote. Both Sir Alex Ferguson and his longtime lieutenant Roy Keane were in rare accordance with their perception of the feisty Argentine. The former, meaning Sir Alex, described the left back as, quote, ruthless and would kick his own granny, end quote.
Accurate.
While the latter summed him up succinctly in typical fashion, quote, a nasty blanker, end quote.
A nasty blanker?
Yes. Well, the blanker was not the word that was used. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Roy Keane used the actual word.
Okay, I was about to say I could not see Roy Keane editing himself.
No. I'm editing Roy Keane for the sake of the show.
Can we please have a naughty option somewhere in the chain?
Let's put it this way. It's a word that starts with the letter F, ends with the letter R, and is not the word flanker.
Got it. Yeah, that's his CV as a player. Does every player manage the same way that they played? No. Go back and look at some of his media availabilities at Vélez. He will call things out. If a question he doesn't care for, he'll let you know he doesn't care for it. He can be abrasive. He can be demanding. I don't have a problem with any of that, to be perfectly honest. I don't worry about it. The results are the most important thing, and I think what he is trying to do, and I think you have to put it that way. I mean, even a Pep Guardiola gets questioned when he makes a move to a Manchester City, to a Bayern Munich after what he did at Barcelona. You have to have questions about what Gabriel Heinze has done at Vélez, and does it translate to Atlanta United? Matias Almeida is the closest touchstone in MLS for this style. It's not the same. They're both influenced by Bielsa. One of Marcelo Bielsa's former assistants, who's working in South America, said in an interview that Heinze was the most Bielsa-like of the people out there who were seen as followers of Bielsa. Heinze says he's nothing like Bielsa in terms of at that level and et cetera. He says Bielsa's the best, and everybody else is just trying to reach that. He's being modest as well. He is seen as one of the more promising young managers in the game. Very, very hyped up about what we've seen from him. Does it translate? And that's what we're going to have to wait and see if that announcement gets made, and he is the guy. Does what he wants to do, does that style of play that he is trying to bring, because that's not going to change. And he's made that abundantly clear in interviews during his time at Vélez. He will try to instill a style of play, and they will try to achieve that style of play. That's very Bielsa-like. Yes, results matter, but he will be happy with performance based off how they play as well. Where people will say that you played bad because you lost, he will say, no, we played well, but we lost. And he will explain why, but he will look at the level of performance as well. He says he's not going to change. They're going to play their game, and they're going to try to control the game. They're going to try to take control of these things. They're going to try to do those things. It's going to be something that he will take very, very seriously, but that will take a little bit of time. So we will see how that goes if this gets done. All All right, back to the Twitch pitch. Winter Wind says, to be honest, I'm even more in the direction I was with the FDB hire. Cautiously optimistic, but reserving judgment. Like FDB, I see pluses and minuses. Well, the biggest difference is he's coming off of successes. And that's the difference from Tata as well. I mean, Tata, depending on how you looked at it, some people said that you could say he's coming off of successes, getting to back-to-back Copa America finals with Argentina. Some would say he's coming off of failures because they didn't win one. They lost some penalties both times to Chile. He's not coming in like Frank did off of 2 short stints at clubs. He's coming in off of 2 good years at Vélez Sarsfield. Good years. It did not win trophies. Good years. So that's going to have a different feel. I think one of the biggest differences is just judging from what I've seen of Heinze at Vélez and what we saw play out with Frank de Boer, and a lot of this is the postscript with comments that came out afterwards, and Frank said it. Maybe he didn't communicate as well with the players as he should have. It always seemed like he had an expectation that he would guide them to figure it out.
Yeah. That
they would figure it out. It was almost like guided discovery. Whereas with Tata and with Heinze, this is what we do. And it is drilled and drilled and drilled and drilled. And training sessions are intense because of that. This is how we do it. I don't need you to figure it out. I'm going to tell you what to know. That's very different. That can work, as we saw with Tata, as we've seen with Heinze at Vélez, as we've seen with Bielsa at many stops. That also will require players to buy in, and that was an issue on Frank de Boer's side. We'll find out a little bit more, and it's a different group now too. Will the players give that buy-in straight away? It will be a different way of working, and this is where I think Stephen Glass's time with the team was very important. I feel like he cleared the decks. It would have been very difficult for anybody to come in and change the mentality of that team straight away. Now you've had time. Now you've had somebody who came in and got it back to basics, and that's what a lot of the players were saying with Stephen Glass in charge. It got back to basics. They were getting back to where they wanted to be. Okay, now you can come in and take it to another level, working in the way that Gabriel Heinze wants to work, if this is the hire. So I feel differently than I do about the Frank de Boer hire because the questions about Frank were about the last 2 stops, and I think they were unfair, but they were real. The questions about Heinze are more about, does his style transition to MLS? Does it work with a different group? Are people going to be patient? It's different questions, and they're not as worrisome to me. So we'll see. Rope says, I think folks like his connection to Bielsa and Tata. And that's fine. I mean, it's just, does that make it a slam dunk? No. And for people to be as riled up and as excited as they are at times, that's not it. It shouldn't be enough. Maybe it is enough. I don't know. It shouldn't be enough with what some people are saying on the back end of how successful they think it will be and how big they think it will be and all of that. So we'll see how it plays out. Winter says, I do wonder if him having been a standout defender as a player will lead to further positive development of Robinson, like in FDB's first year with Miles. Could absolutely help. You look at George Campbell, you look at Efrain Morales. Good stuff. Clarín even had in their piece, and I don't think they're related, but Clarín tried to draw the parallels here, and they got it wrong on Morales on the timeline. They said that, it's you can tell that Heinze is going to Atlanta because they just signed 2 young players from their academy to promote. And they mentioned Morales having signed there. He was signed a long time ago. But they mentioned Jackson Conway. And they said, are these some of the first things that Heinze is asking for? He's known for playing young players and developing young players. He did a very good job at that with Vélez. He produced a lot of players who moved on from Vélez and made the club a good bit of money. He will play the young players if they're ready. That's something that did not happen with Tata. And that's a big difference between the two. It did happen with Frank, and I would expect it to happen with Heinze if he is the guy. He will have no problem if the situation calls for it and it's George Campbell's time to play, he's going to play. It doesn't care how old he is. If Morales shows well, he'll play. Doesn't matter. So that's where it's at. Domer says, I'm not knowledgeable in the analysis of a coach and applying their style to our roster, so I don't know who is best. Don't care who the coach is. Want to get back to fighting for the top of the league. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That is where I am at, too. There's just a lot of, I don't know, I think there might be some misunderstandings about his style. I'll be curious to see how things get said going forward. I've seen some back and forth on people who have judged the way he played at Vélez and have termed things kind of differently at times. So I want to see how that plays out here. We'll get into tactics a little bit here in a minute, just of what I've seen so far. I haven't gone back and watched a lot of full Vélez games yet. I will, just to continue to learn more and kind of get a sense of not just highlights, but off the ball, how the movement is, how things are when they're winning, how things are when they're losing, what kind of changes you could see, stuff like that. Shiva says, I'm curious how a young coach will work with a young Atlanta team. The results from Vélez are good in that regard because he was even younger as a coach and he worked with a very young team and did very well. You know, you look back at the top players. So we'll go back to last season in Argentina. And let me get it 1 second. So we'll go back to last season where Vélez finished third, 11-6-6. They were 9 points out of the top spot that Boca ended up winning. River was 1 point behind them. So they were, a little off the mark there. Boca and River should be ahead of them when you look at how much they spend. So we go back to the last season, and we look at who their top players were, if things want to cooperate with me as I try to make this happen on the fly, and it wants to reload something else.
Yep.
All right. You look at their back line, Lautaro Giannetti, 27. He's been a key for them. You look at Thiago Almada, who's 19. He's been a very important player for them. They will not be afraid of playing like a player like Nicolas Dominguez, who went on to Bologna, 22. 23-year-olds played a good bit. This is a young Atlanta team, too. It won't be a problem for him. That part I don't worry about. Ricky asked about the 2-year contract rumor. Yes, that's out there. That was not reported by Merlot yet, but it is out there. I have seen that one. I don't know if that's the case or not. It makes sense. I could see it. Ricky says also, what kind of assistance do you think he would pull after the Mascherano rumor attachment? Well, we go back to what we talked about when the first rumor happened, and he met with Fernando Gago, who had played for him at Vélez, just retired a few weeks ago. And it sounded like Gago was going to work with Heinze. Don't know if that was with the Atlanta job already in mind or if that was a possibility. The Mascherano thing is interesting. I don't know what's behind that. Both are holding midfielders. Both are legendary players. Both are brand new coaches because they've just retired as players. So that would be a bit of a question mark. The rest of his staff is pretty consistent. He needs a new lead assistant because Sebastian Sejas left the group. He's looking for his own gig as a manager. He left the group. They need a new assistant. There you go. One other thing that I thought was interesting reading up on Heinze, 3 of the people that he's talked to a lot about coaching, Mikel Arteta at Arsenal, who he played with at PSG, talked to Arteta when he was at Manchester City about Guardiola's sessions and kind of how they worked and how they saw the game, et cetera, et cetera. Not a surprise that he would talk a lot to Cesar Luis Menotti, the Argentine winning manager in 1978, a manager who was known for very creative attacking soccer, and also Luis Enrique, the Spanish national team manager. Those are 3 people that Heinze speaks with about coaching. I'd be curious to know how much he speaks to Tata Martino and Marcelo Bielsa about it as well. I would be very, very surprised if the rumors are true and Atlanta's reached out to Heinze and they're getting close to a deal done. If when the first contact happened, if Heinze's first call wasn't to Tata. I'd be blown away if that didn't happen because who would know better than how Atlanta works than Tata Martino. that would be in Gabriel Heinze's orbit. So you would assume that there was a conversation there, and if he takes the job, you would assume that the conversation was very positive on thoughts about Atlanta. And Tata said nothing but positive things about Atlanta United and the city and how much he loved his time here. And if he was younger, he would have stayed longer, stuff like that. So that probably helps a little bit of the transition. Winter says the big thing I'm hopeful for is that the new hire can establish a connection and rapport with the players quickly and get their buy-in. And yeah, I think that's a key. That's absolutely a key. Christopher Abel, I don't even know where that's coming from. Says Heinze is a boring manager. I don't think you'll find anybody else who would say that at all. It's been quite the opposite. Everybody says he's one of the most exciting managers. Says his teams are horrendous in front of goal. I think you have to look at the talent that he's had. He has not had a forward the level of Joseph Martinez. There are questions about how the team attacks. I think that's a fair one. But to say they're boring, I would just have to thoroughly disagree. Virtually no experience, I think, is a little bit of a stretch as well, even though he doesn't have as much experience as DeBoer or Tata Martino had, obviously, when they took over. I don't know. I don't know where that's coming from. I'm surprised. But I'm also a little surprised that I haven't seen any negative takes on this either outside of that one. So, yeah, I don't know. The question, and Chris brings up a point, and I've said it, he hasn't managed at a club with the kind of pressure that he would have at Atlanta. He's played at clubs that have had that. There's no doubt. I mean, you look at the CV, he's been there and done that as a player, and that would help. But he hasn't managed at a club like that. And there would be questions. Again, that's where I think some of the reaction being so over the top could in a way be detrimental because it makes the expectations almost too big from day one.
Right.
And that's not fair to anybody, let alone, a guy who would be going into the second part of his fourth year managing. I mean, that's going to take a minute to adjust. It's the first time he'd be outside of Argentina. He would have Argentines on the roster. That would help. I think he would command respect, obviously, because of his playing career for people who haven't seen as much or heard as much about his work as a manager. For those who know the work as a manager, I think the respect would be there. I wouldn't worry about that. It would be coping with pressure. It would be coping with MLS and the peculiarities of it at times. Those are valid questions. Those are fair questions. I think they're questions, though. And that's where I think maybe it's a little bit overboard the other way, Chris, in that there's no way it could work. I disagree with that. I mean, Marseille was talking to him as him and Villas-Boas as the two people to take over a Ligue 1 club in Champions League. So, it's not like Atlanta's the only ones talking about him being a good fit. Palmeiras was ready to offer him the job. I believe they did, and he said no. So, it's... I understand the questions, but you can't let it go too far the other way. I think it's a good potential hire with a good background, with a defined way of playing. These things are good, with some questions about making the next step in his career. And that's fair, too. Anything on Twitter before we keep going on the Twitch pitch?
Not related to the current subject, but no, to your point, any manager who takes over the Atlanta United job, Heinze or otherwise, they're going to have expectations on themselves as well. Mm-hmm. In Heinze's case, it would be someone who would be coming to MLS. He would have to be adjusting to everything that he hasn't faced in his previous jobs, the travel, having players buying in, increased talent pool, the opposition being increased talent pool as well, and getting everyone who's going to be on the roster that either you're going to assist in sitting there and saying, hey, look for someone who can do this, or who is already there. You're going to have the buy-in period too. There's going to be these elements of adjustment for both the players to this new coach, whoever it is, and for the coach to his new situation. In Heinze's case, it is someone, if it is the 2-year deal, if all this were to come to pass, he's going to want to go to another pasture, a greener pasture in Europe, perhaps, or someplace else.
He's going to want to go to Europe. There's no somewhere else. He would want to go to Europe in 2 years.
So to get to Europe in 2 years, there's going to be a self-expectation about success. The pressure is going to be put on yourself in addition to the environment that you're going to be in. But there's going to be that adjustment period to get to the success that you want to achieve, both for the club and for yourself, so you can get to that next stage in your managerial career. The biggest thing for me is just being patient about the adjustments of all of the moving parts that would be associated with the new coach, whomever it is, getting to what you're looking for in the 2021 season for Atlanta United.
It's going to be interesting. We'll continue digging into it. You got questions, send them to us on Twitter at SoccerDownHere. You can also send them in the Twitch pitch, twitch.tv/SoccerDownHere. We'll dig into this probably a little bit more on Monday, but there is a little bit of developing news. The Utah Royals players, according to Jeff Kassouf, were informed today that the franchise is relocating to Kansas City.
Yeah.
If you remember from NWSL history, they were in Kansas City and they moved to Utah. Now they're going back to Kansas City. It's all different owners. It's all different situations. The current situation with Gabriel Heinze trying to sell all of his soccer holdings after lots of different things came out in Utah about all kinds of different things that were wrong. It was originally thought that all of it would be sold together. I don't know exactly how this is going down yet. The equalizersoccer.com will be a prime source of information. Jeff Kassouf does great work over there.
Yep.
Keep up with him on Twitter, Jeff Kassouf, Kassouf. It's legit. Brian Dunseth had tweeted out a couple of things that turned people's heads about it, saying that he was happy that him and his kids had a chance to support the team while they were there in Utah. Brian works for Real Salt Lake on the commentary side, so it's happening. I don't know the details about how and why and all of that yet. We'll get into more of that Monday probably as more comes out, but that is breaking this evening as well.
Yep.
It's going to be hectic in December as we start to head into 2021. Winter Wind talking about the transition with somebody like Gabriel Heinze taking over. He says, I would almost expect a slow start. Change over, the move to MLS, etc. People need to remember even Tata, who did his research and had some early struggles and commented on having to learn and adjust. Plus, things will doubtfully be back to normal with supporters, and that's very true as well. Patience will be very, very important any which way. Abby's having buffering issues. Sorry about that. No clue what's going on with that. Let's see. Now, Chris says, I don't think Heinze should be given any more slack than FDB or Tata. Go back. I said FDB should have been given more slack. You have to expect a transition period. And that's not to say that, we'll go back to what happened with Frank. Like, Frank, in the first 10 games or so, people were already starting to call for his head, which was a little wild because by that point he had started to get on a run where he was getting wins and they were playing very well defensively. The first couple league results were rough, and the Monterrey game, Monterrey went on and won the CONCACAF Champions League. I think he should have made some subs late in that game. That's one game of stuff. They had chances to level that thing at the bends and just couldn't finish. You have to give a new manager a little bit of time, no matter who they are. So I agree in that all of them should have been given time. I think Tata was because everything was brand new. There wasn't really any questions about that. You also had a 6-1 in game number 2 that got everybody excited. With Frank, people were riled up because people were riled up about Crystal Palace for some reason, which I thought was craziness. He should have been given more time from the fan base to adjust, and he wasn't. Whoever the new manager is should be given time to adjust, especially with the adjustments during hopefully the latter stages of a pandemic. It won't be a rebuild because you got 21 guys under contract. That just won't happen. Let's see. Chris, I don't think this is a demoralized group right now. Again, that's why Stephen Glass's time was very important. Man, you are riled up, Chris, and that's cool. That's cool. I mean, we're bouncing off of everything, so all good, and everybody's having the conversation in the Twitch pitch, so no problems at all.
And Tino with a question.
All right, what do we got?
Making a leap here. but how much does the one-leg playoff format benefit the new manager in terms of expectations? My gut is that Atlanta United should be in the playoffs with a stable manager, and the current format lends towards peaking at the right time.
Yeah, it does. It also just invites chaos in general. I think you're probably looking at this as, 2 years. I would not expect them to be a supporter shield team next year. Although they could. I mean, they have the talent to. But I would expect some adjustment. But I would expect them to be in the mix to win MLS Cup next year because of the talent they have. I think second year, if, whoever is here for 2 years, and let's say it's Heinze, the second year, if you have some continuity, you've got the system in place, you should be better from the jump, and you should be contending for the Supporters' Shield. That would be kind of like how 2017 and 18 went, where 2017, you're going to have some bumps in the road, you're going to have some tough spots. You want to be playing your best at the end. Yes, the single game could help you in some ways. It could also create that chaos that knocks you out. But year 2, you should be contending to have the best team in the regular season as well as winning MLS Cup. So that's the rough timeline I'm looking at for whoever the hire is. And if it's Heinze, then that would be the timeline for him. People ask about, do you wait until after the CONCACAF Champions League game to announce? You could. It might be a little bit harder to do now that it's hit the mainstream in Argentina. It also depends probably on what you could do to announce it. I don't think you're going to be able, well, I don't know, actually. I mean, you might be able to get him in the country to announce it at a virtual press conference and then have him go back and get the work visa and all that and then come back when he can't. Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't know what the timeline even looks like because of all those kinds of things. You could easily do it virtually whenever you want if he's the guy and he's in Argentina, if that's the case, and you're all connected virtually. I don't know. I don't think it affects the CONCACAF Champions League either way because he wouldn't take over for that because I doubt he would have the work visa straight away. So unless they've been working on it, and that's been one of the holdups, is that they've been getting that in place before they make the announcement. I don't know. He would not take over for the CONCACAF Champions League is my understanding because I think they've already committed to that being Stephen Glass's tournament. And it might be one game. Do they hold it up to see if they get knocked out? I don't think you have to. I don't think it would affect it. I don't think you have to do that. We'll see. I think so much of it is logistics of just what things could look like right now with an announcement. Who knows? Burned with a question, which players currently on Atlanta United's roster will not fit Heinze's playing idea? And understand, I'm still getting acquainted with it and trying to get the nuances of it. I know there's people out there who will tell you they know all of it inside and out. Good on them. I'm not going to lie to you. I've watched highlights. I've watched videos to document it. I've read a lot of stuff. I've translated some stuff. I have a decent grip on it, but I can't tell you every single nuance to it. Players that I think will struggle with it. Let's look. Distribution from the goalkeeper is an important element because of how high of a line you play, and at times the goalkeeper steps up between the two center backs if the 6 is further up the field. So you need a goalkeeper who's going to be good with distribution, and Brad Gazan has been that at times. He had some slip-ups this year at times. That's going to be something that will be very important. I think he can do okay with it. I'm not overly concerned, but you can't have some of the mistakes that you saw at times this year. The center backs as a group, I feel like, are all in pretty good shape to deal with it. You like Robinson's range to be able to clean things up because you're going to play very high. There's going to be mistakes where your free man in the back, and I think a lot of times it would be Miles because of his pace, has to step up and grab somebody else. So, you're going to need that ability to do it. Miles should be fine. You're going to have to keep working with him on the long passing, which he was good with this year. I think people are still holding on to some old thoughts on him. His long passing was very good this year. I think Franco's perfect for it as a center back. I think Fernando Meza is very good for it as a center back because both can step up into the midfield, and that's an element that I picked up on watching some of his stuff in that. I think some people have described his style as a 3-4-3. I think he starts out of a 4-3-3 most of the time, and it turns into a 3-4-3 in the attack with the 6 dropping in. One way things can tweak is where if you do play 3 in the back, and he would do that from time to time. Sometimes it looked 3-5-2. He would have to get back to stepping up, and one of those center backs would drive forward. And when the space was there to drive forward, they would drive forward. I think Meza is very good at that. I think Escobar is very good at that. The wing backs, I think Lennon and Bello are really good fits for this. So, if you're looking at 4 and they're the outside backs, if you are looking at 3-4-3 and they're the wing backs, those guys are a really good fit for it. The 6 is going to be critical. And that's a position I think you're going to have to go get. The 6 is going to be critical in it because they have to be able to defend like a center back at times. They're going to have to be able to be a backboard for possession because his teams were very patient in possession in the attacking half. That's something that I hope people understand. Fast-paced style, all that, yes, it's true. But when they get the ball, they want possession. They will dominate possession on teams. And that's like Almeida's teams. People look at Almeida's teams as lightning-fast attack. They have 60% possession a lot of the time. And a lot of times that's recycling it to create the opportunities they want. The 6 is critical. I don't know if the right 6 is on the roster currently, and that's not new. Let's say it's a 4-3-3 to start with, so you've got 3 center backs that fit the style really well. Campbell will need to develop in it. His quality on the ball is good. His range is good. His physicality is good. You want him to get more comfortable on the ball in those moments. The 2 midfielders, I think Marcelino Moreno is such a good fit for what I've seen of this style. I think Barco would be really, really interesting because the one element that has stood out to me watching Heinze's stuff and watching Velez is constant width. Constant. If the ball's on the left side, the right wing or the right back, both of them don't pinch in. One can, but one has to stay on the touchline as wide as you possibly can. Go back and look at a video with Thierry Henry talking about this during his time at Barcelona. That's a Pep tactic. That's a Bielsa thing as well. You can go all the way back to Van Gaal and Cruyff and Rinus Michels, which, yes, there's a lot of overlap in these things. That's why Frank wasn't a crazy hire. It didn't work with Frank, but the track record was there. The pedigree was there. Heinze wants to stretch the field. We know Barco wants to come inside. If Bello stretches the field and that frees Barco to come into the half space, cool. I think that can work really, really well. But Barco will be interesting in it. I think Jurgen Damm stretching the field wide on the right side, perfect. To create the big switch for him into space, love it. I think Joseph's a great fit. The 6 is the biggest question, and maybe who the other central midfielder is. I think Heinemann has elements that he would like because of his quality on the ball. I think Josetu has some definite qualities that he would like because of his quality on the ball. I think Remedi has some very big qualities that he would like too because of how he hunts the ball and how when the ball turns over, he's going to immediately initiate the defending side. That's where the questions would come for me, is when the ball turns over and Heinze's teams transitioned from offense to defense. It's very 1v1. It's not pure 1v1 like people have tried to describe Almeida's, which isn't pure 1v1 either. But that's the basic idea, is that everybody grabs somebody near them. That's who they defend. You're trying to provoke a mistake. Velez would get into tackles. They would try to jump passing lanes. More than anything, they'll put pressure on the ball. They'll put pressure on the players around them to provoke a mistake. Moreno, I think, gets that. Moreno's style suits that in the midfield, no problem. Hosetu and Heineman, that's going to be something you've got to kind of drill in. Lennon, no problem. He's very aggressive. Dom, no problem. He's very aggressive. Barco is actually a pretty aggressive defender. The numbers back that up. I think that's something that developed over time here. I think that's something that actually Barco got better at under Frank, was his commitment to the defensive work. I think he'll be okay. It's the other midfielder and who it is, and, of course, a new 6, because I don't know if Remedi's at 6. He might be. I don't know. I don't know if Hosetu or Heineman could transition into being the 6 in this. I don't know if they're strong enough defensively. So out of those 3, 2 spots, or adding a 4th person into that, 2 spots I have questions about. Kind of the same questions we had anyway.
Yeah.
The other side would be that free man element, because Heinze's teams, yes, they were a lot of 1v1. Yes, it was a high press. Yes, they wanted to win the ball back quickly. But they always had somebody free defensively. That meant the other team had somebody free as well, and you'd usually allow that to be one of their defenders. Like if you're playing Orlando, Robin Jansen's not going to step up and drive forward on you. So you're going to leave him. He gets the ball, all right, fine, we're going to defend everybody else. You figure it out, Robin. He's probably going to play it long. That way you have somebody free. And my guess is that would be Miles Robinson because of his range, and we've seen him play that kind of role before. But that's an element where you've got to work on those transitions. And, you know, if you're 1v1, look, if you lose the 1v1 battle, then it's all falling apart as you go. So those transitions to, okay, Bello was pushed up high. He lost his 1v1. Can Barco get back and cover it? No, he can't. Okay, now one of the midfielders has to slide over. That means everything has to slide. You have to grab somebody else. Those elements are going to be the things that you're working on a lot in training sessions. Those are going to be keys.
Yeah, you had mentioned the left, and you got into the discussion about Barco and George Bello. I was going to ask about the right. You got into it with Dom and Lennon. I was going to ask about adding the likes of Franco Escobar into that mix if he was your right back in that kind of idea as well.
Then where does Brooks Lennon play?
That's what I'm saying. It's an either-or question if it's Lennon or if it's Escobar in that situation.
I think it's an either-or question between Meza and Escobar.
Okay.
That's what I think. I could be wrong in that. I could easily see under Gabriel Heinze, Franco Escobar become a team leader and start the transition to becoming a captain. I could definitely see that. I think there's a lot of similarities between them. Both came up at Newell's Old Boys as well. Heinze would know Franco at least a little bit from when he was there as a younger guy. Heinze was there through 2014. I think Escobar first started to get into the mix with first team games more like 2016. So he would at least know of him, I would expect. He would know what Escobar thinks about the game, though, from the time with Tata and from the time at Newell's. That would be something I think you would lean on. So my guess is you would put him centrally in maybe a little bit more of a responsible spot for organization and stuff. Could be wrong. There's also the potential, as was reported a while back, about Meza potentially going to Tijuana. That hasn't come back up lately, but I could see Escobar becoming a vital piece centrally under Gabriel Heinze. Byrne says, with an Argentine coach, it would make sense to bring Garza back as a cultural bridge between staff and American players and to back up Bello. You just have to check on that injury history. It's gotten worse during his time in Cincinnati. If your backup is having injury problems, that's a huge problem. If it checks out, yeah, I don't think anybody had any problems with Greg Garza's time in Atlanta. I think he was important. I don't think he's a starter at this stage in MLS. I think the injuries have kind of robbed him of that, which is a shame. But as a backup, and if he accepts being that person and being a bit of a mentor to Bello, who I don't know if he necessarily needs it in a big way, but won't hurt, could be good. The cultural bridge, I think, is good. I don't know if it's a necessity. I honestly really think Franco could end up being that. Yeah. I think things are trending in that direction, and you might not need that bridge as much if that relationship is what I can envision if Heinze gets the job. Jason Nick says, is it a given that the Eels riddle will involve condiments, or is that too easy? That's too easy. He'll come up with something different.
Something involving the number 57?
Yeah, that'll definitely be something. Well, no, that's too easy. It'll be something different.
Something with trumpets, maybe, for Gabriel?
Could. I don't know. I'm not going to pick it. Burns says, will Heinze get more say in the player acquisition process than FDB seemingly had? I don't know. No idea. I've seen some people say that they should just turn it over to him. He's never done that, first off. Like, that wasn't what he did at Velez. I think there's this big misconception that managers go out and run the transfer market. And outside of, in this league, Peter Vermes, that's about it. In some other leagues, do managers have strong input? Yes, but they don't build teams. You know, I mean, that's just not how it works. Input should be there, and I don't know where the breakdown was. I would love to know that at some point. You know, was Frank not specific enough about what he wanted? Was he too easygoing on it? Did he kind of leave things just up to the group to decide, and then he wasn't happy with it? I don't know. We'll find out, and we'll see what happens here, but he's young, you know? I mean, would Gabriel Heinze have some players from his time at Velez that he might want to see considered? Yeah, that would make sense. Would he know some other players from the Argentine, Primera División, the Liga Profesional de Football, that he would want to potentially see looked at? Yeah, I think that's a given. Would he be calling the shots on the transfer market? No, I don't think that's the case. Sorry, D. Graham. I didn't know the buffering was so bad. You can listen if you're still with us on the app and on the website. If that's better, there's no video, but you can listen, and that should be fine. I think most people say that works out. Shiva says, I hope Gabriel Heinze does not have social media. I don't think he does. I don't think he does. I'm pretty sure he doesn't.
Efforting.
You better make sure you're looking at the right things.
Uh-huh.
D. Graham was hoping we'd get to the twos talk about lineup and stuff for next year. There's no way to even call it yet. The twos made their end of the season announcements on contracts. It's a pretty clean slate coming back. To be expected, with more academy players coming through, they're going to eat up the bulk of the minutes. So you do have some of the players from last year back. Mo Jadama's not back. Amir Bashti's not back. Obviously, Jackson Conway's now on a first-team deal. Trying to think who else will be an issue.
Lamine Jonet is not back.
Lamine Jonet, but he didn't start, so I understand that one for sure. Maybe the one that surprised me was Babacar NJ. I thought he might be back for another year, but he's a little bit older, so if you didn't see the development in a year, you're going to change over. I think the understanding for the twos that people have to have is that guys have a limited period of time to show they're an MLS candidate. And once you've seen it and made that decision that they are not a candidate to move up, they have to go somewhere else, and you have to give somebody else the opportunity. If you have a stagnant second team, you're blocking players from potentially coming through and earning MLS deals like we saw with Conway, like we saw with Campbell. So there's always going to be a lot of turnover, and I don't expect to see guys here for more than 2 seasons with the twos. I think that's kind of the cap. Could you see a special case? Sure. With somebody who's going to transition into coaching? Yeah. Somebody who has an injury? Yeah. Academy players are separate from this. I'm talking like guys that you bring in under contract from outside the organization. So we'll see. But the biggest one was NJ, but then you think about the age, I get it. And if you didn't see enough this year, then you move on. Center back, I wonder who they'll replace Jadama with. Are they ready to turn that over to one of the kids as a regular, or do they expect Campbell to be a regular there to play? Or are they going to go get a kind of a semi-veteran to help the young group come in through and play with like a Matthew Edwards and Efrain Morales, those kinds of guys? We'll see. Chris says, part of my frustration, it's Christopher Abel, is that the fan base is seemingly falling over themselves to hype up this young, inexperienced manager who, yes, could be a good fit, but also has questions. I thought we were a big club with big expectations. I'm not saying just shut down the idea of this hire, but we need to be a little more fair about his experience as a manager. We're a big club. We shouldn't take just anyone. That makes more sense. Okay, now I understand where you're coming from. I don't disagree in some ways with you, Chris, because a lot of people, and this is chatter, and it's stuff that you see on social media, and it's stuff that you hear from other fans and stuff like that. But the chatter turned really negative on Frank DeBoer really fast. Yes, the Crystal Palace experience went poorly. Inter was a mess at that time as well. Neither one worked out for him. You can't take away 4 titles in 5.5 years at Ajax. Something nobody's ever done before. That didn't happen by accident. It didn't happen out of luck. It happened because he did a good job. So people turned really fast on that. He had more experience than Heinze does. That's a fact. That's not speculation. That's not taking a guess. That's a fact. Frank had more experience coming in as a manager in a league that I think is very comparable. I think the Eredivisie and the Argentine First Division are very, very comparable in terms of level. Frank won his trophies at a club that was expected to win trophies. Heinze didn't win, but got a 6th place and a 3rd place with a team that was probably not expected to be in those places. Keep that in mind. It was a larger body of work with DeBoer. It's a much smaller one with Heinze at the First Division level. The hype is real in terms of what people are saying. I think there are reasons to be excited if he is the guy. I really, truly do. But there are questions because of that experience level. And that's fair too. That's my biggest concern is the hype is so strong that if it's a slow start, and I mean, a slow start could be, being in the middle of the pack after 6 games. I hope it doesn't turn so fast that that's unacceptable and now you've burned out the hype already. This is a process. The way he would want to play takes time. It won't be airtight day one. It wasn't with Tata. That team evolved over the season. You saw them be very aggressive, a lot of pressing, a lot of work off the ball defensively early on, and then you couldn't sustain that, and they dropped off more over the season. The Peachtree press idea. You didn't see that a whole lot with Tata Martino, to be real, over 2 years, because he realized you can't do that with the travel in this league. You can't do that with some of the conditions. What adjustments will you see as Heinze learns in that role? Because Tata had to learn in the role. Every manager who comes into any new league has to learn in the role. Pep had to learn the Bundesliga. Pep had to learn the Premier League. And you had people saying he's not going to do it. His style won't work here. And he had 2 of the best seasons in league history. People have not said, although they've said it about others, and I would expect it will start because it's the nature of social media. I would expect that if the hire happens, there will be people who will say, foreign managers don't work in the league, burr, burr, and come up with the tired narratives there. It will happen. There has to be an understanding that it's not going to be its best game 1, year 1. And that would be the case for anybody, especially more so for a manager with the experience of Heinze. He's got a big, strong personality, so I think he can handle the knocks. He can handle a slow start. He's not going to waver in his confidence. But that could happen realistically without anything being wrong, just because that's the nature of it. And I agree, Chris. I totally agree with what you're saying about this is a big club. That's been the mentality. People freaked out about the results this season early on with Joseph out and said that was unacceptable. What will the reaction be with a new manager where there's an adjustment period? Will that be the case? It should not be for anybody. Will that be the case here? I don't know. I don't know. I worry that the hype might be a little bit too strong. We will see. Burns says about the Utah Royals, seems like they were unfortunate collateral damage of the RSL situation. I totally agree. Kelly O'Hara gone to Washington. Kristen Press gone to Manchester United. Vero Boquete gone to AC Milan. So, yeah, I mean, it's not what it was even if they had come back. I don't know what the Kansas City situation is going to be. I hate it because I thought the Royals had a lot of potential. But now you start to wonder about what RSL is going to be. It sounds like the league can take over the selling process in January, and we'll see what happens. Don't know. It looks like some people aren't having buffering issues, so that's good. Winter, good point. Frank had the burden of trying to follow Tata, so that absolutely is difficult. Yep. That's why I do think Glassy's time, too. Not that Frank had that kind of follow the man thing, whoever would come next. But I think having the buffer is always good because it feels like a clean slate. It didn't feel like that for Frank de Boer, and the expectations were very, very high. Chris says, I think we need to look at the Seattle and Toronto models who have made conference finals a combined 7 times in the last 5 years. Both have stayed with the same manager, roughly the same group. Maybe Atlanta should be looking for a more long-term fit so they can be as successful as those clubs. Some people have wanted that. Some people have wanted somebody who would be here for a long period of time. That's true. I don't worry about that as much because I've seen clubs that have been very successful with managers who come and go. It puts more pressure on each hire because if you have a bump and you're expected to be a top club, which every signing, every hire can have that should have worked out, and it didn't. Wonder why. We don't know what happened here. That should have worked on paper. When you're changing managers on a more frequent basis, then, yeah, okay, then you have to make another change. That's not always ideal, but it's life. MLS is interesting, in that you look at the LA Galaxy run under Bruce Arena. You had long-term security there. He was there for a long period of time. He won 3 MLS Cups and lost in 1 MLS Cup, so 4 MLS Cup appearances in his time. You look at Schmetzer, you look at Vanny. Are they managers that get the kind of hype that a Gabriel Heinze gets or a Tata Martino got? No. Tata had this success in the league as well. Second place overall in the season, tied the previous record for points in a season, 1 MLS Cup. He did really well in his 1 year. Frank did really well in his 1 full year as well. He finished 3rd overall in the regular season, got to a conference final, won the Open Cup, won the Campeones Cup. So it's hard to say that the Atlanta model is failing. I think people have tried to make one bad year be that. Toronto didn't make the playoffs in 18. Now, Seattle hasn't had that kind of a blip. But that can happen to anybody. I think it's still too short of a sample size. Yeah. We'll find out, though, Chris. I mean, it's not a crazy question, and there are people who are not happy about the report of it being a 2-year deal and not happy about the idea that he would be looking to go to Europe at some point. I get it. But I think that's a little bit more of just where the game is headed. Could you get the Seattle or Toronto situation? Maybe. I'll be curious to see what Toronto does next. What do they go for? I don't know. What do you got?
Nick Brawley says, long-term is the main concern for me. I would rather have a short-term manager who sets us up for long-term success.
I think that was Stephen Glass in a lot of ways. I think he solidified the foundation and got it back on track. Short-term to set up the next person. I think the long-term success is more of what the investment's going to be, what the academy's going to produce. I think those things are going to be there, so that's not as much of a concern for me. You want to keep things moving in the same general direction in terms of philosophy and style. That was where there could be some questions about, did Frank deviate too much? I think the idea was that he would not. I think at times he did not. At times it felt disjointed, and that can't be the case going forward. So, Burned on Frank says, honestly, FDB's playing idea of controlling defensive transitions better makes more sense than playing a super high press / line with man marking in MLS with the inherent climate, heat, travel, thin roster issues. But it didn't work out. And Byrne thinks that's due to the roster construction issues, not the playing style. We'll see how Bielsa ball works out in MLS. At the very least, it'll be fun to watch. It can be. And I mean, you hear the comments about Leeds United in the Premier League. I mean, it felt like they were just gushing over Leeds and how much fun they are to watch and how we want people in the stands to watch. And it's so great. It's so great to watch. They're in 13th. I mean, you compare talent level, like they're not in the top 10 in the Premier League in terms of talent.
Right.
But they're 13th in the table. Are people going to be okay with a team that is fun to watch, but is not winning the overwhelming majority of its games? Now, the argument, not all, that's not fair. A lot of 2019, and then a lot as things went off the rails this year, was exciting style of play, exciting style of play, exciting style of play. It's got to be an exciting style of play. I want my old Atlanta United back. All those kinds of things.
Right.
Okay. If the style is there and the results aren't, what happens? That's been my question for so long, and nobody's ever answered it. We haven't had to. This could be where that happens. They could be very fun to watch. They could be very open, like San Jose, except with a whole lot more talent.
Right.
But you will see bad goals conceded with a high line. It's the nature of a high line. Any team that plays a high line will concede bad goals because mistakes will happen. So are people going to accept that? They say they are.
Right.
Are they?
But then it happens, and
yes.
then what?
That's the question that I have. It will be, from a tactical perspective, if it is Gabriel Heinze, it will be fun to watch. There will be plenty to talk about with how things go down in matches for us, for anybody else who's writing, doing podcasts about the team. There will be plenty to discuss. That's exciting. That's cool. The results, I think, have to be there, too, in an Atlanta situation. Atlanta in MLS is not Leeds in the Premier League today. Atlanta in MLS is not San Jose in MLS. In terms of style is great because we don't expect to get results anyway. Atlanta in MLS is not Vélez in Argentina. It's not. So that's a difference, and that's going to be a question. If the results don't come, but the style is there, are people going to be okay with that? My gut tells me they will be okay with that for longer than they were not okay with Frank's performances. But there will come a point where the results have to be there.
Right.
And will that happen fast? That we don't know. It's impossible to say. I think it absolutely can. But I could see these dips in form. Look at San Jose, who've had these moments at times where they've been world beaters and then concede 6 goals in back-to-back games. Like, things can fall apart that way. Atlanta will have far more talent than the San Jose Earthquakes. And I think they have the right talent to play this kind of system. But it is very risky. And notice how Tata pulled back the risk. Bielsa never pulls back to protect risk. Never. Mm-hmm. Heinze is described as the most Bielsa-like of the Bielsa disciples, and he didn't work for Bielsa, he played for him. But he's described as the most Bielsa-like. Will he adapt and be pragmatic if he has to? He hasn't had to yet. We'll find out if he is the hire, because there will come a time in an MLS season where you're playing 3 games in a week, you're playing in Vancouver and then flying back to Atlanta and then flying to New Jersey, and you're playing 2 of those on turf, and you have a thin roster and you have injuries. Do you get more pragmatic? Do you do what Tata Martino did in 2018 versus what he did in 2017? We don't know. There's no way to know the answer to that question yet. Will you have to? Hopefully not.
Right.
But I think it's just inevitable that you will at some point, even for a short period of time. Will he be ready to do that? and we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and for me, it's the patience level of the fan and someone who is going to be following Atlanta United. If a Heinze is the hire, and you have these extremes, and honestly, consult Chris Ashley for how he feels right now about Leeds United on a.
But it won't be the
basis.
same. That's the thing is, Chris, even with the extremes in games, Chris has an overriding feeling of being happy to be there, and he should.
Yes,
that will not be an overriding feeling here. The overriding feeling here will be, where's the trophy?
Right.
That's a massive difference.
Yeah. And for me, it was like, what's the patience level? Where's the patience level going to be with Atlanta United fans, knowing that you want trophies, you want to be at the top of the ladder, you want to win the last game of the year, but you have all of this. You have the adjustment coming in with a new coach and his philosophical style. If things don't start the way that you anticipate in your head toward winning that cup, I want to know where that patience level begins and ends as something like this is going on, knowing that the desire for the end game is the same, but you have a coach who's going to take a little while to get to where he wants to be. And to your point at the end, if you have schedule compression, are you still going to live by the letter of the law, or do you adjust into that time window to sit there and it's like, okay, I have to think ahead a match or two in a week's time and have to adjust appropriately for that.
No,
so I can still.
Okay, hold on. I want to be clear in what you're saying, because it's not about adjusting about a week or two in terms of who's playing.
Right.
That's fine. Like rotating the squad to keep people fresh, all that's fine. I'm talking about adjusting the way you play. I'm talking about pragmatism in the tactics of the day.
Right.
That's a big difference than, okay, I've got a busy week and I got to play 3 games and I'm going to rotate my 3 central midfielders and play these 2 guys 180 minutes and these 2 guys 90. Like, that's okay. That'll happen. That I'm not worried about. It's, do you look at it and say, man, we're going to Vancouver on a Wednesday and we're coming off of playing 3 days before and we're tired and beat up. We're going to sit back and defend a little deeper today, and we're not going to press like that, and we're going to play in a different way and try to win. Mm-hmm. That's the part that we haven't seen, because he hasn't had to.
Right.
And that's the part that will happen at some point, I think, because it did. And Tata wasn't willing to do that during the season in 2018 even, but he did in the postseason. Will those kinds of moments happen? And we'll have to wait and see.
Right.
Handu says, we have a better understanding of the U22 initiative than we did last year, or so far this year? And how do you see this team utilizing it? We don't yet. There hasn't really been an announcement. There are reports out of Colombia that the Vancouver Whitecaps are on the verge of signing Deber Caicedo from Deportivo Cali, and he would fit under this. 20 years old, a winger, valued at $1.43 million on Transfermarkt. He's played 59 times for Deportivo Cali at 20 years old. Good bit of experience. He can play on either wing. Good player, 15 assists in those 59 games. Okay. Vancouver's not going to spend the same way, but you're starting to see teams at least be linked to moves that would fit this. I think Eric Lopez fits into it. How would Atlanta use it? It's a good question, because you could go 2 different ways with the number 6, and Byrne says that's a position they have to go out and get. I think so too. You could go veteran, and Heinze did that with Gago as a veteran player at Vélez who played that role, and Gago was not known as a top defender. He was a very smart player, incredible on the ball, but he played that 6 at Vélez at the end of his career. You could go veteran to solidify everything. You could go U22 initiative for it if there's a guy who comes in with experience. And there are players who would fit in the U22 initiative who have experience in South America, that have played a lot of games, that could come in and do really well. We've seen it in this league before. I mean, Diego Chara, when he came into the league, did really well. You look at Andres Perea in Orlando, coming out of Colombia, I think he could have played more for them. I think he probably should have played more for them. You've got the ability to do that if it's the right player profile. So that wouldn't shock me. Outside of that, I don't think there's another dramatic need for a starter this season to go U22 initiative with it. Could you look at a project? Maybe that's the way you go. If you decide I'm going to use all three, Lopez is one. If I like a 6 in that role, cool, I'll go there. And then I got one more to burn. Who's a kid that I think could turn into something next year? Who's a kid who's a left winger that if I sell Barco would come in and play after that? Or is that Lopez? Then who's a kid who could come in and play if I sell Miles Robinson or if I sell George Bello? Or you know what I mean? Like, I think the other one would be potential. So we shall see. Domer says DP6, a big destroyer. You don't have a DP slot right now. There is talk you could potentially buy Marcelino Moreno down. I don't know if that's this year or not. There's talk you could sell Ezequiel Barco. I don't know if that's this year or not either. I agree that Remedi hasn't been the same since the 2018 postseason. But his characteristics really suit what I've seen of Heinze's teams to a point. The defensive positioning would be the concern for me. As a 6, I would worry about it. As an 8, then he's competing with Josetu and Heinemann for time with Marcelino Moreno next to them. And there will be times where Moreno's going to need a break. Okay, you've got the players to do it. But can Remedi beat them out at an 8 in that position in Heinze's style if he's the guy? Yeah, I think he could. Maybe more so than as a 6. I think he might fit as an 8 a little bit more in a Heinze kind of system. So it could give him a new lease on life. We'll see. I think the 6 is the spot, though. I really think that's the one you got to go for. Winter Wind says, if you want a young number 6, I've been digging up film on Vera at Argentinos Juniors. He is one. Ugarte at Phoenix is one that I've seen that I really like. I really like Ugarte at Phoenix in Uruguay. Maybe a little bit more of a long shot because of the level, but yeah, he's a player who grabbed my attention when I came across him. Vera at Argentinos is quality. Could you go for either one? It'd be interesting what Heinze would think of Vera if he's seen him. I mean, he's obviously seen him, but if he rates him as, yeah, that's who I want to build around. If you're looking for a position, if he is the hire in Gabriel Heinze, where he would have an influence and impact on a potential move, I think that's the position. I think the number 6 would be the one. Tesco with a really good question, and John, you're going to have to answer it.
Okay.
Why didn't Nani get fined or suspended by the disciplinary committee?
So you want me to think for the disciplinary committee here?
Yep. Because I can't. I have no explanation.
I was going to say I can't either. So if you're asking me to think for folks who I can't have any. Looks like the hangar just got opened up here late in the show.
Okay, pilot of the black helicopter, what's your theory?
All right, Airwolf, let's hear it.
To be fair, there are 2 pilots of the black helicopter. The other one is not with me tonight.
That's true.
The Maverick to my Goose is not here. So I have to carry the load. I don't know why Nani didn't get punished. I do firmly believe, though, in the black helicopter theory. The suspensions we saw for Osorio and for Pereira, they don't happen if those teams win. Major League Soccer and Disco ain't suspending them an extra game if those teams win. Osorio isn't getting that suspension if Toronto wins. I'll get back in the helicopter and leave now.
All right, Stringfellow Hawk.
Well, let's run through it really quick, what they announced. So we'll go to the Jonathan Osorio one. I think everybody saw his kick to the nether regions of Alex Muyl. He was suspended for 1 match, fined an undisclosed amount for violent conduct. This was a disciplinary committee parameter number 3 situation where the disciplinary committee may act where the professional referees organization acknowledges an on-field referee or video review error, and where the committee is unanimous that the play warrants at least a 1-match suspension as a clear and unequivocal red card is egregious and or repeat behavior in nature.
They're going to ruin a conference final or MLS Cup. I'm so terrified.
I think you're down to the guys who are doing well. I'm not too worried about it at this point. I'm fingers crossed. I don't have wood to knock on. Okay. Other things the Disco did. The Pereira serious foul play, the studs up lunging wild red card. He got an additional match suspension, so it's a 2-game suspension total, fined an undisclosed amount. Not surprised about that one at all. That makes sense. I do wonder if they had advanced if he would have got the extra game.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read it. The MLS Disciplinary Committee has found Orlando City SC in violation of the mass confrontation policy in the 60th and 71st minutes of their Eastern Conference semifinal. Orlando has violated the mass confrontation policy for a third time this season, and the organization and head coach Oscar Pareja have been fined an undisclosed amount for their actions. Due to their roles in instigating and escalating a mass confrontation incident, Orlando City midfielder Junior Urso has been fined an undisclosed amount for his actions in the 60th minute, and Daryl Dike has been fined an undisclosed amount for his actions in the 71st minute. All I can tell you is I look at the page on MLSsoccer.com that has that description. I see it's a 71st minute situation. Daryl Dike in the face of Alex Chilowitz. I see another player in the face of Alex Chilowitz right in front of him. And, who do I see off to the right? Nani screaming at Alex Chilowitz.
Yep. Correct.
I said it when we talked about the game. Junior Urso and Daryl Dike deserved more punishment than they got. Yeah. I also said that Nani did too. And for everybody else to get something in this and Nani not to get anything is a complete and utter joke.
Uh-huh.
Not a funny ha-ha.
No, yeah.
Joke.
If you're going to punish those guys, you got to get everybody. You can't just hit those 2 or 3 guys and then treat Nani like he's got Teflon on. That can't happen. I don't care if it's Nani. I don't care who he is. It doesn't matter in that instance. You can't hit all those guys like that and then just, that's all we saw. Nope.
It's like the scene in Beverly Hills Cop where Axel Foley goes to the Gilbert Gottfried character and Gilbert is trying to open his wallet. It's like, I see over in this one hand, I see something, and then I see something in the other hand. And then when I see in this first hand, I can't quite make out what it is, but I kind of see what's in the other hand a little more. It's just like, come on, y'all. You know what you see. Ugh.
Yes, accurate. Okay. So, other things, Jarrett, we've been talking a lot about Gabriel Heinze. No surprise. I'm sure you expected that. Handu, we were talking
absolutely.
about roster and lineups and et cetera, et cetera. Handu says Heinze's teams play 3 in the back, though. No, they don't. Not all the time. They play a lot. Velez played a lot of 4-3-3. That's been one of the very interesting things to look at when people are describing his style. Is some are saying it's 3-4-3 all the time. Others are saying it's 4-3-3 all the time. It's both. It's a lot of 4-3-3 where in the build-up, the 6 drops in between the 2 center backs, and it turns into a 3-4-3 in build-up. They would also play 3-4-3 or 3. Yeah, exactly. But they would also play 3-4-3 or 3-5-2 on occasion. More 4-3-3 than 3-4-3, but he will do both because they're not that different when you really break them down. It's more about being fluid, and this gets back to the idea about the formation means everything. The formation means very little, and you look at a Bielsa team, you look at a Heinze team, the starting formation means very little. It's more about who the individuals are and what happens in the match and where they end up. I mentioned, and I want to get your take on this in just a second, Jarrett. I mentioned that Franco Escobar could be in for a very important role with Gabriel Heinze due to both coming from Newell's to potentially Heinze knowing Franco. Franco would have been a couple years out from a first-team debut when Heinze retired, but I think there's a pretty good potential that he knows of him. I could see him being groomed to be a captain. I could see him playing a very important role. I could see him playing a center back. Shiva says I love Franco. My only reservation is his temper. He has to control that as a captain. Before you jump in, Jared, what I would say is not so much he has to control it, because the temper generally doesn't bother me too much. He has to control how he deals with referees more, because he has to know when he's in trouble or not. And I think that's been the issue that he's had, is he hasn't found the line in how he deals with referees sometimes, and he's gotten himself in trouble without needing to. Yeah. He's going to have to manage that better if he is a captain type of person. But you see, I mean, Roy Keane had a far worse temper than Franco Escobar, and he's one of the greatest captains Manchester United ever had. It's how you manage it is the more important thing. Not necessarily controlling it to squelch it, but how you use it is the way I look at it. I'm sure your Celtic squad has had some feisty captains in their day.
I mean, oh my God, why are you doing this to me?
Do they play tomorrow?
Man. Well, Scott, they're playing tomorrow. I think they're playing Livingston tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Okay, got it.
Like, late enough that my child's going to have me awake already, so I'm not going to be able to pretend that I slept in and missed it on accident. You already have one there who's kind of past it now, and Scott Brown with a temper. And shout out to Neil Lennon, who's, entrenched himself so firmly in this losing proposition. Still the only guy to captain a Celtic team to the round of 16 in the Champions League and manage a team to the round of 16 in Champions League. Yeah, so, good on him for that. He had a temper when he played. Look, it is, for me, it's about managing it and, like you said, finding that line. Like, I think about like an LGP guy. Like, LGP did some really impressive things on the field talent-wise. Like, for 2+ years, we sat there and screamed into a mic every morning for 2+ hours a morning about how LGP was a highly underrated center back. He worked the refs the right way. I think he found that line, and he was good about finding that line in terms of his conversations with refs, where he wasn't getting those cards. When I think about LGP getting sent off from games, I think about like the game in Minnesota in 2018 that really kind of made you feel like, oh, this might be special. Or the U.S. Open Cup, where he gets like 2 yellows in 3 minutes, just 2 stupid yellows. His were never a matter of like attitude going out the window. It was just like, he lost his mind for a couple minutes, and it was, his actions on the field, not necessarily his attitude with the officials. And I think that is where I'm at with Franco, is just, work on that ability to communicate. And some refs in MLS are going to handle it differently. Like we've seen, Jair Marufo be able to communicate, with the players more who have that Latin base, where it is more of you're going to be worked by the players from the first minute, and you got to know it's not personal. It's how they do things. It's they're working you in the 5th minute for a tackle, so that in the 75th minute you let one go, and you let something turn, as opposed to a guy like a Chris Penso, who can get a little trigger happy. Yeah. But it's knowing the refs, and it's difficult in the midst of all of that. But for me, I think it is a matter of you just want to get Franco to that point where he's communicating better, so he's not putting himself on thin ice. Because God knows when he's on, when his play is on, I had zero problem handing the captain's armband to Franco. I had zero problem at all. Because that's a dude who is going to lay everything out there. He's going to carry the energy. That's for damn sure.
I think he grew up a lot this year.
Well, and Jarrett, to your point, I think that what we've seen in some instances is center back Franco Escobar and outside back Franco Escobar have been 2 different types of individuals in how you've managed your emotions. I think that at times when we've seen Franco moved into the center, I think that we've seen that individual that we might anticipate seeing if he's moved inside for full-time work, as opposed to what we've seen out of necessity at points.
Yeah, in a sense of romanticism with teams, and I get it, and I know that a lot of people do. and some fans are still learning this, especially if you're just jumping into soccer from, traditional American sports. Guys staying, managers staying for extended runs, it doesn't happen a lot. So it is really fun to romanticize the idea of, oh man, this guy could be not necessarily a lifer here, but, a 5 to 10 year kind of guy who has a legacy at the club. Like, you expect that with Joseph at this point, that you would like to think that, hey, we're just going to keep, handing you checks for a couple $1 million a year, and we want you to stay as long as you want, and whatever. Here's the check. You write the number, you sign it, and then you write the number you want on there. And you hope that Joseph stays for an extremely long amount of time into his 30s. That'd be awesome. I thought LGP could be one of those guys who stayed long term. I'd like to think that Franco could be one of those guys that stays long term as well. Now, I guess that's kind of where I moved my, fantastical thinking of, man, this guy could be here for a while, and that would be awesome, especially if he ends up getting the armband, that kind of guy.
You just see where it falls. I mean, it's unpredictable. Like I could see Escobar be a player who does get an opportunity in Europe, or gets an opportunity with a big South American club. I think sometimes we think about that as not a good thing, but I disagree. I mean, if Escobar became somebody that a Boca or a River came in for, yeah, that's great for him if he gets that opportunity. So, but he could also be a player who's here for 10 years. That can happen too. It's just sometimes you don't know where things go. There was a good point in the Twitch pitch about managers and kind of what things think. It was Tesco said it. So does anyone really plan for a long-term manager, or does a short-term manager just stay? And that's generally how it goes, is somebody gets to stick around and gets the opportunity to. All right.
I think that was what jarred me so much about, like, Matias Almeida when he went to San Jose and talked about being there for the long haul. I'm like, oh, damn. Oh, I mean, we'll wait and see. But the fact that you talked about it so openly, that was what was interesting to me with him, for instance.
It was. I'm just going to ask for your comment on this one, Jarrett. Burned with an update on the UEFA coefficient race. Scotland is now over 3,000 points behind Austria in the race for 10th. Wow. Celtic and Rangers not having a very good 2020. Doesn't look good for Scotland for a fixed place in the UCL group phase for 21. It will probably and deservedly go to Red Bull Salzburg. Your thoughts, Jarrett Smith, Denzian of Scottish football.
You know what? Man, shout out to Rangers for trying to carry the damn load, because Celtic sure as hell has. They've given up 12 goals in three of their group stage matches. 4 goals twice against Prague, then 2 goals against Lille, where they blew a 2-goal lead. Then 4 goals against Milan the other day after blowing a 2-goal lead. Gave up 4 unanswered goals. Man, shout out, like, Rangers is the one carrying that coefficient, is the only reason it's even that close. This is sure as hell isn't anything Celtic is doing, which sucks. You know who's going to be real pissed about that is Rangers, because they're kind of banking everything on making the group stages next year in Champions League. And if they don't get that straight away, and, let's say if Rangers goes into a Champions League qualifier next year and they get knocked out, buddy, if they don't get that Champions League money. I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, John. It seems like Rangers might be betting futures a bit.
That's what I'm thinking.
And if they don't get that automatic Champions League spot, and if they don't qualify for Champions League, and man, those Champions League qualifiers are really weird. A lot of times that involves going to Eastern Europe or to Israel. It can get sideways really quickly. Yeah. If they don't get that automatic bid, they're kind of going to be pissed, and I understand.
That could be very scary. Badgermon with some Manchester United slander says if Franco had played for Manchester United, Disco would ignore everything he does. And Tesco follows up and says, too bad he isn't Nani. Man, Manchester United slander, Nani slander. I mean, it's all fair game around here.
Yeah.
I can't necessarily argue it. I need a vote really fast because I'm picking a new game to put on the TV in front of me. Should it be River Plate and Godoy Cruz? I think River's pretty much sealed everything up with moving forward in the Copa. Or, and I'm leaning this way, I just need backing on this, Universidad Católica and Liga de Quito in Ecuador.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
You've already made your decision.
Yeah,
I think you
Trust
were
your
already
I talked
hanging
myself
there.
into it as I was bringing it out. Okay, cool, and I think it's halftime, so perfect timing. All right. Let's see what else we still got here. Here's another one I'll throw out to you guys because I just saw this article from the Toronto Star. Laura Armstrong writes, headline, could Michael Bradley be Toronto FC's next head coach?
Please do the Derby thing like Wayne Rooney. Please do that.
Oh, the Derby County deal where
Derby
like you
County,
just
yeah,
sorry.
okay.
Jess just like felt a ripple in the force and probably wrote me a really mean message because she mispronounced that.
That's true. That'd be wild. I don't think he's ready to retire yet on the field, but
Yeah.
No, I think he could give you another couple of years. Maybe not necessarily as a starter all of those years, but
no, he should give you, if he plays 2 more years in Toronto and joins the coaching staff as a player coach, I'm cool with that. He could play in 2 years 50 games and maybe start 40. Be okay with that. And maybe even start a few more. Liam Fraser needs to play in that team. Liam Fraser is the replacement. He needs to play. You need to commit to him. You've got to rotate him in more. Use Bradley in the big moments where you need to, and start to give Frazier, a third to maybe a half of the time this year. That's what I would think. Tesco asks, have there been player coaches in MLS in the past? There actually have. Walter Zinga was a player coach for the New England Revolution when they were in the midst of their crazy period before Steve Nicol showed up.
which crazy period would that be? Because I feel like the Revs have had 1 or 2.
Well, that's the one before Steve Nicol showed up when I'm trying to remember how many coaches they went through in the very beginning days of the league. They were really
it was like Roman year of the
bad
5
and
emperors
weird
kind of stuff. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was really strange. Let's go back and look at that. I think Zinga was 99, if I remember right. I mean, the Wikipedia page actually has it right. Like, the early years from 96 to 2001, you don't want to try to spend a whole lot of time there. You want to move on very fast and get to Steve Nicol coming in 2002 and actually getting to MLS Cup in his first year. So it was Frank Stapleton year 1. He was let go. Thomas Rongen came in for a year and almost a full second year. Zinga was the interim then, and then he stayed on as the manager for 99. Then he was gone. Then Nicol was the interim, as he was the assistant there for Zinga. Then Fernando Clavijo got the job until Steve Nicol took over in the middle of 2002. And then he was there through 2011. And since then, it's been pretty stable. Nicol from 02 to 11, Jay Heaps from 11 to 17, Friedel's year and a half that did not end well, and then Bruce Arena.
Right.
Yeah, the Brad Friedel time in New England really deserves a deep dive.
Yes.
It does, but that's kind of mean. But man,
He wanted his players to get beat up at the grocery store.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is like it's kind of mean to them to do it, but I don't feel bad about doing it to Friedel after everything that was said and done.
It was
the one
weird.
I feel bad for was like the end of the Heaps era.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
like
quit
when
on
you
him.
come here and you have the Rev wedding in Atlanta, like
Yeah.
man, that goose was so damn cooked at that point. It was hard, even before, during, and after the Atlanta massacre. That team was hard to watch. Like it was past time. That was harder to watch. Whereas Friedel was a little bit it's kind of a little Schadenfreude in hindsight, I think, because of the way he handled it all.
Yeah, he did not make it easy to like him with some of the things that happened.
Right.
I think Zinga might be the only player manager in MLS in the history of it. I think. I don't think anybody else has played while managing. Jason Kreis was a player, retired, and then became a manager the next day.
Right in. Right.
I think Zinga is the only one who is an actual player manager. There've been a few player coaches, but I don't think there's been a player manager. Bernd asks what we're watching tomorrow morning. So Bernd is simulcasting Stuttgart and Werder Bremen. And Women's Super League, Manchester City and Everton at 9:30. Nico Gonzalez still out for Stuttgart. Might take them a while. Bremen has been Nick's asked, did ESPN Plus ever get fixed today? It did later in the day. I didn't get a chance to watch the early stuff. But I was watching Serie A, and I was watching the Bayern Leipzig game, and I didn't have any problems with it. But I know it was an issue for the earlier Bundesliga games. I think the 9:30s. Right.
Yeah. No, because, I mean, you mentioned the article on Bradley, because wasn't there discussion about it was Paulo Sousa?
He's been linked to it out of Portugal, so we'll have to wait and see. He's been a bit of a journeyman, but he's been linked to MLS jobs before, so It's possible. All right, so Jarrett, you're probably watching Celtic at 10 o'clock tomorrow, right?
Man, if it's on ESPN Plus, sure. If it's not, I'm not going out of my way.
Well, it's not. I'm sorry. It's not. At least according to Live Soccer TV, it's not.
Oh, that's okay. That's probably for the best. I'll just catch the replay, and I'll pick it apart later.
So let's see. What do we have here to
I mean, for me, it's probably the Prem as a starter, and then I'll be switching back and forth. I mean, right now, to give you an example, I'm watching the first half of Alianza and Isidro Metapan out of El Salvador.
Oh, I completely messed up on what I will be watching and what I recommend everybody watch now. It is Liga MX and the playoffs. Second leg starts here. It looks like in 30 minutes. They're having a very extended pregame show. Yeah. Leon and Chivas. It's 1-1 going into the second leg. This one is at Leon.
Tudene.
Yeah, should be a good one. Tudene has it. Univision has it. That starts here in a little bit. So that will.
Do they have a metal detector walking from the tunnel to the field?
Of course,
because I think they should.
Of course they do. It's Liga MX. They have been ready for these kinds of things well before we came along, Jarrett.
I just want to make sure that all deaths are properly not accounted for, but
documented.
Yeah, documented's a good word. We can, so they can't throw their arms up and go, we didn't know. Well, they know. Yeah. They're fine.
Fair enough. All right, so let's see. Games tomorrow. Your ESPN Plus Scottish Premiership Game of the Week is at 7 o'clock. Ross County hosting Rangers.
Too early, not happening.
Man, right.
Ross County's feeling good after beating Celtic.
They're going to lay
Rangers,
an egg, aren't they?
Rangers, I don't think, has given up a goal in the league this year, man. Staggy's about to get run.
9 o'clock, you've got in the Women's Super League on NBC SN, it appears. Chelsea hosting West Ham. That should be a good one. You've got the Everton-Manchester City match that Byrne mentioned. Prim, you've got Sheffield United hosting Leicester at 9:15 on Peacock.
Could be ugly.
Yeah, I'm not excited about that one. Werder Bremen and Stuttgart at 9:30 on ESPN Plus. You're going to have to pay for Celtic and St. Johnstone on Celtic TV.
No.
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 Yeah. 11:30 Tottenham and Arsenal on Peacock.
Yeah, there you go.
Who you got? What are the numbers, John?
Okay, hang on.
I just expect you to have them up at all times. Come on now.
I know. It's there we go. All right, so we're going to get juice boxes here in a second. But, by the way, for college football down here, Coastal Carolina stopped BYU as time ran out at the 1-yard line. So Coastal Carolina gets the win 22-17.
That's what I'm talking about, Chanticleers.
With their teal field.
It's a great football game.
Hold on. We have an update. I'm going to skip that madness about a teal field. We have not started the second half in the Ecuador match yet, and we have a manager being red carded. That is amazing. The second half is not even kicked off yet, and the referee came over and sent a manager off. I don't know what happened. I have no idea. The manager is incredulous. I feel
like
game.
This is going to happen in the Eastern Conference Final. With Porter and Arena.
Yeah, I've got the early second half of the La Equidad Independiente Santa Fe match from the Colombian Primera División right now.
Oh, okay. I've got Universidad Católica 1-0 on Liga de Quito. Just started the second half, and then it'll be going to León and Chivas at 9:30.
All right, so here's your Prem.
Tottenham and Arsenal. What we got?
Tottenham and Arsenal at 11:30. Tottenham right now is a plus 104 in the aggregate. Arsenal a plus 290, and your draw is a plus 245.
Jarrett, what you got? What you thinking?
Sorry, what were the numbers again, John?
Tottenham a plus 104
At home.
Arsenal at home. Arsenal a plus 290 on the road. Draws a plus 245.
I don't know if I'm touching that.
I'm not either because of Tottenham with what happened midweek. I'm not touching it.
I don't think I want anything to do with that. That's just me.
I know
I'm sorry,
Lloris is in goal and not Joe Hart, but I still can't touch it.
Tottenham wins.
Oh, Joe Hart.
Tottenham wins, and people keep yelling about Mikel Arteta, and I think they're barking up the wrong tree, but Tottenham wins.
Is Mikel Arteta our Ghost Malzahn?
He's the new Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Yeah.
Ole's going to be happy. Ole should send him a gift basket.
Yes, he should. I think Ole's going to get replaced by Thomas Tuchel in the long run. I think that's the one that's going to happen, yep.
Okay.
I think at the end of the season it'll be Tuchel, unless Ole wins the Prem or wins the Champions League. I think it's Tuchel.
But are they better with Tuchel than with Ole?
Depends on if Ed Woodward has anything to do with anything.
Just
after
go, that. Ed. Just go.
If Ed goes somewhere, not in the soccer portion of the business, yes, they can be better with anybody. If Ed is still there, the better quotient will be limited. I just don't see it any other way because Ed kind of stinks.
Yeah. Some stuff on the Twitters.
Sure. What we got? We still got more matches tomorrow as well, by the way.
Oh, I know. Nick Brawley said, and this is a Heinze question.
Okay.
From what you know, what's one word you would use to describe Heinze's coaching style?
Intense.
That's the word I was going to use.
Width is the other one that just jumped out to me. How stretched the field gets from left to right. Attitude. Those are the things that jump out to me from what I know and what I see.
Apparently, Pro is working the SEC tonight.
Oh, boy.
No.
What did Pro do?
So Alabama is doing their ritualistic beatdown of LSU because Nick Saban's very emotionally damaged by losing to the best flash-in-the-pan team we've ever seen last year. Mm-hmm. Apparently an LSU receiver dropped the ball at the 1-yard line running into the end zone. Like the most obvious Chad Johnson, Deshaun Jackson dropped it at the 1, and they never reviewed it. They just let it go.
It's kind of like the Kellen Mond touchdown earlier today on the Plains where he was down at the 1 and they didn't call it.
I didn't even get to see all that. I saw the score and I just left you alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently Pro's involved in the SEC now.
Good times.
Good job.
Good times.
Boy.
You got Schalke and Leverkusen at noon. That could be fun to watch for bad reasons when it comes to Schalke these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can watch the Danish Super League. Lyngby and Randers at noon. I'll probably be watching Crotone and Napoli at noon. Yeah, I'll be watching Napoli. Fun to watch. Schalke? Yuck. That's what winter
says. That's unless you want to see the floating dumpster on fire during a flood.
Sometimes that can be entertaining. Badger says Arsenal Fan TV is a must-watch after a loss. So he is hoping for a Tottenham win, I'm sure, and an Arsenal loss, and then skip on over to Arsenal Fan TV where there will probably be lots of yelling, right?
Oh, you ain't kidding.
Lots of yelling and not much making sense.
No.
2:15 Liverpool hosting Wolves. What are the numbers on that one?
Minus 182 for Liverpool. Wolves are a plus 545 to win, and your draw is a plus 3.25.
Liverpool wins it. I don't like any of those numbers.
Yeah.
I go parlay with the two home teams, Tottenham and Liverpool. See what happens.
I could be talked into that.
Yeah. I think that's not too crazy. 2:45 Sampdoria hosting Milan on ESPN Plus, but we will all be watching the Eastern Conference semifinal. Columbus Crew hosting New England Revolution on ABC.
Eastern Conference final.
What did I say? I don't even know.
Semifinal.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking league semifinal. Eastern Conference
That's okay.
final, sorry. Columbus and New England, ABC, ESPN Deportes. What are the numbers?
Crew, plus 133. Revs, plus 200. Your draw, plus 250.
Those have gotten a little weird. I think they've narrowed.
They have.
I thought they had. Huh.
I'm all in on the Revs for this entire damn thing, so I am a very unreliable source on
I'll
this.
take the draw. I'll say it goes more than 90 minutes.
Draw, and then it goes to penalties, and who wins penalties?
Oh, let's see.
Is Eloy Room playing?
That's my first question.
He was listed as questionable on the MLS website, which wasn't
Revs.
going to be a determination, but they're using it now.
Revs.
Matt Turner is kind of been on one.
Yeah.
And
Hot
it's
keeper
kind
in
of
the
in that.
playoffs.
Remember, like, what was it, Jason? Like 6-7 years ago when Bobby Shuttlesworth just got on one in the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I think Turner's better than Shuttleworth. I'm not saying he's the same kind of player. I think Turner's. I have bought a lot of stock in Matt Turner.
Yep.
I think Turner's on one in the kind of way that, like, gets you to the cup.
I could agree with that.
And,
Yeah.
I don't know if it gets there, though. These teams didn't play in the regular season. Welcome to 2020 being weird. It's the fourth time they've met in the postseason. And 4 matchups, because remember, sometimes these were 2 legs. In 7 matches in the postseason, New England has won 4 of them, drawn 3, and has never lost to Columbus in the postseason. Last time they met was 2014 Eastern Conference semis. Revs advanced 7-3 on aggregate. Revs went to MLS Cup that year. They lost to LA Galaxy in extra time. This could be the last match at Mopfre Stadium. Even if Columbus advances, it could be, I think Seattle. No, actually, I think if Columbus advances, then they play the final at Mopfre. Because I think they were better in the regular season than Seattle. People were getting worked up about the seeding. It's not about which seed you were in the conference. It's about which seed you were like overall in the league. And I think Columbus was better than Seattle. Porter said he's expecting to get some of the guys back who had tested positive. He also doesn't know how much they'll be able to help him. He talked about how for that 10-day period where they were quarantining, they weren't able to train, they weren't able to do fitness, the team wasn't able to do anything. He said, we aren't able to do anything physically with them that would raise their heart rate. It becomes very difficult and tricky for these guys coming back in to be able to play a major role. I didn't know that. I didn't know they couldn't have them do any individual training in whatever isolation they are. I didn't know there was that level of degree on it.
Yeah.
If New England wins, the player that leads them there, in my opinion, outside of your stars and Heel and Bo, I think if Tajon Buchanan has the game that he's been having lately, he is the reason why they win. If Columbus wins, and again, outside of their majors, I think it is down to
Jonathan Mensah.
No, I expect him to do it. I think it is. I think it's Josh Williams because I think Williams will get the start here next to Mensah. That's a question mark. Keita's got playing time. Williams has got playing time. I think Williams, the veteran, gets that opportunity. And if he is able to kind of lock up Buxa, which I think he can, and allow Mensah to be a little more aggressive and step forward and deal with Bo because what Gustavo Bo likes to do is not be that front number 9, but to drop into the hole behind. And I think you're going to need somebody to step up because Artur and Nagbe are not the ones you want defending Gustavo Bo. It's going to have to be more of Mensah stepping up to do that. So you've got to get the good performance next to him to deal with Buxa, or Buxa can hurt you. The tactics are interesting in this one. Bruce will have something up his sleeve.
Defending Bo right now, like he's in his bag in a way that I really don't want to have to ask anybody to do it. He's
an awkward matchup for anybody Columbus has too. Will Caleb Porter change things up to deal with that. I don't know if he really can. I'm really curious to see what Bruce Arena has up his sleeve. Does he have some kind of variant that we haven't seen yet in the postseason that can really throw Columbus for a loop? I don't think Columbus has a lot different they can do. Columbus has to have a lot of the ball. They have to have 55% of the possession or more. They have to control the game that way. If they don't, I don't think they win. I got to make a pick, though.
I just want Bruce to be the one to take New England finally to the promised land, just because I want to hear the toxic levels of salt that come after that.
Well, I want to hear the conversations with Caleb Porter and Bruce Arena on the touchline. I want that microphone.
We're not going to hear it.
But the problem with that is if they haven't figured out the dump button feature and splitting your audio channels, if that conversation happens, it's going to be a lot of and. Can
we please have a naughty option somewhere in the chain?
You know it. I want that separate channel on the 3. That's what I'm looking for.
I think like 5 minutes in, Caleb Porter will be like,
"Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
Oh.
He's a little bit older than 40. But
but still.
He said all the right things this week, saying that there's no problem between the two of them, even though that GIF has made the rounds of him maybe saying something after a Portland goal against the LA Galaxy. And
he said all the right things, not all the accurate things. There is a
that's a good point.
There.
That's a good point. There will be friction at some point between the two. There's just no way around it. I really am not feeling good about this pick. I'm not, but I'm going to pick the New England Revolution.
Okay.
In regulation time.
Okay.
I'm going to pick them to win 3-1.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
With 2 goals from Gustavo Bo, because I don't think Columbus can deal with him. And I think who gets the other one? Bunbury gets the other one, and Carlos Gil has 2 assists.
Okay.
And Matt Turner has a save that makes the rounds worldwide, and Columbus just doesn't control the game. If New England gets an early goal, I think Columbus is really going to have problems here.
Agreed.
So, I don't feel good about that at all. What were my numbers for New England? 200 plus 200?
Yes.
And I don't feel good about it, so I will take. Because I don't really like them that much, but when you go, since we're going to watch Leon and Chivas here in just a little bit, you guys might not know this, but you go to the local Latino league, and they have the. Because I don't even know what they are. I tried them once and I did not like them. They look kind of like a little pinwheel thing. It's not. I don't think it's a chicharrone. I gotta try them again now because I'm not even sure exactly what they are. They look like a candy thing. They're not, because they usually douse them in the hottest hot sauce you could ever imagine, and I think that's my aversion to it. I'll take those and put them on New England.
Okay.
Or refried beans, because I don't really like refried beans.
Oh, yeah, I'll go that way, yeah.
Oh, those are great.
They are the pork rinds. Thank you, Bernd. I think it's the hot sauce that scared me, because I've developed a nice taste for pork rinds these days. I think I'm going to have some chicharrones with the game tonight.
Okay.
You like refried beans, Jarrett?
I like refried beans.
I don't.
You can have mine.
I like the charros. I like some of the
I do
different
too.
ones. The charros are so much better.
I have rarely found anything from Central or South America to eat that I have not enjoyed.
I'm going to have Guthrie's for the match at 9:30.
Guthrie's is always good.
Oh, yeah, buddy.
Yeah, Guthrie's is a star. It always is. The best sauce of all your chicken finger places.
No question. And so, we did the Daily Double today. After the game was over, we went to Mama G's. And on the way out of town, we got the full bucket of Guthrie's to bring home with us.
Yeah, you got to do it that way. There was many a time in Athens where we went through the Guthrie's drive-thru and got multiple buckets and took them back to the dorms.
Strong.
Yeah, strong is one way to put it. Dangerous. plenty of other
Strong
things.
stomach building.
Yeah. One thing about the Guthrie sauce, and I probably shouldn't say this because John's about to eat it, but I don't think John really cares.
Nope.
Don't put a penny in the sauce if you don't want to know what happens to the penny.
Oh, I'm not a surprise. I'm sure it absolutely destroys copper.
No, it doesn't destroy it. It is the cleanest looking penny you will ever see coming out of it.
Oh, so it cleans. So it's like a copper cleaner.
Yes.
Wow.
This reminds me.
It was very
This reminds me of
strange.
my grandmother worked at a Coca-Cola factory in. Oh man, I guess it probably would have been either out like in southern Louisiana or southern Mississippi, and once told me if you knew what they did to make caffeine-free Coke back in they used to serve it, you'd have never had it.
Nope.
Yeah, I don't want to know.
No.
I don't want to know.
No, don't tell Mike either.
Oh my gosh!
Well, I mean that's that Coke Zero.
Okay, burned with breaking news, and I did not know this. The Chivas mascot almost died from COVID.
Was not aware of this.
La mascota de las Chivas. Man. Did not know that. They're doing the story right now on 2Day NA. Craziness. Jeez. I'll have to go back and find out more about that. Scary stuff. Dead on burned. All right. Anything else from today that stood out to you, Jarrett? You haven't really. I mean, just give your thoughts in our final couple minutes here on just the Heinze rumors and where you feel about them, because we were kind of through that by the time you joined us.
Yeah, that's fine. Look, I'm all in on whatever they want to do at this point, because I mean, it is for me a matter of you got to trust this front office to get this right. And I do, and I trust that they've done the research on this. I think I've said before, Heinze just gives off like some young Almeida energy to me, which ain't a bad thing.
A little bit.
He doesn't have the trophies that Almeida was racking up early on. Well, not early on, but you get my point. Like, he hasn't won the big trophies yet, but maybe this is the place where he comes and wins those. I don't think there will be any doubts at all about whether or not he has the respect to the players. It's going to be. I'm going to be interested to see how he keeps that respect as time goes on. That's going to be the difference for me. But I trust this front office to get it right, so I'm excited to see what they do and excited to see where they go with this. And if this is the guy, I mean, let's get it. If they do something else, whatever, let's go. But it is exciting to see rumors because it has been a quiet period, and I'm fine with it being quiet in the sense that, like, I fully subscribed to what the Hawks did for so long, which was the team no leaks. Mm-hmm. I was cool with that. And if they want to do that, I'm cool with that too. So we'll see what they want to do. But if they do team no leaks, that doesn't really bother me. Yeah, I guess that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't like it. And I look, I get this is different from a lot of people. And I completely understand why people get antsy about the lack of leaks, especially when other teams are getting stuff leaked all over the place, or there are conversations and rumors. I don't need, like, I'm fine sitting here and waiting quietly. It's okay with me, but I understand if you're not. I totally understand if that's not you.
Two things from Twitter before we go. D. Graham shared this one with me earlier. So we talked about it yesterday, what the DC United fan reaction would be to the reports about Chris Armas.
Right.
DC United posted a sponsored element on social media from their kitchen to their dinner table about how to prepare the perfect pupusa, a traditional Salvadoran dish. It's very, very good. The response from the Barra Brava, one of the largest DC supporters groups, was a pupusa would be a better manager than a Metro's reject to the club.
Huh.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? At least that's a better reaction than you're getting from Atlanta fans with Gabriel. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's not better. Like, it's like it's so, and this was what I was afraid of. Like, they've had problems managing the relationship with their fan base since the move to Audi Field. This is a tough sell because it's not bringing in a manager from a rival who won a bunch. it's bringing in a manager that your rival fired a few months ago.
Right.
That's tough to sell.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's bad. Also, an update from Ian Thomas, Front Office Sport. Said a lot of details still to be sorted on Utah's move back to Kansas City in the NWSL, but it appears the new ownership group will be very well capitalized. Chris and Angie Long's Palmer Square Capital Management has $12 billion in AUM. The asset management firm is entirely management owned. They've never popped up on one of those net worth estimate charts, so it's hard to truly know. But they're both extremely accomplished finance execs with long careers in a growing, well-respected firm that is based in Mission Woods, part of the Kansas City metro area. So there you go. Sounds like they are buying the Utah Royals away from the rest of the RSL group. And they got the money to do it.
Yeah, and I was looking at Meg Linehan's information. According to Meg Linehan, sale is awaiting on Deloy Hansen's signature as of yesterday, according to multiple sources. Also, it appears that Sporting Kansas City has not budged from their point of view of not wanting to share their stadium with this franchise when it comes to town.
They don't have to.
No.
I think some people have gotten very angry with Sporting Kansas City. They shouldn't share it if this club wants to pay rent and it's a number that Sporting Kansas City wants to make, then welcome to business. I mean, Sporting Kansas City built that stadium. That didn't happen magically with a wizard. They had to pay money to do that. So they got to capitalize on it. And you have to balance the effects of having another team play and what it does to groundskeeping and what it does to upkeep and all those different things with how much that is worth. And I would hope they would at least be willing to entertain a rent number.
Right.
Jason Nix, I really didn't even mean to say the Wizard reference in conjunction with the Kansas City Wizards. It happened subconsciously. Byrne asks about the Dwyers going back to Kansas City. That's also interesting.
Well, and the idea of maybe calling them the Kansas City Royals.
Huh. Well, that might be a problem.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's probably.
Yeah. I hope they do something better than FC Kansas City again. That was not good.
Yeah.
Swope Park Rangers.
Sporting Kansas City might get mad about that one, too.
I don't know if they still have the rights to it.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Because, their training facility was Swope Park. Now it's not. So, yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. Interesting.
Just set up an inner city pettiness, please. That's all I ask for.
We shall see. Maybe you'll have a rivalry between the MLS and the NWSL team in town. Joe Boss with a couple of questions. First, he says the female 17s may enjoy Gabriel Heinze.
Accurate.
Okay, I guess. Sure. I have laughed at, as I've been doing searches, I guess they just added, because I don't do Ultimate Team a ton on FIFA. I usually play a season. But they just added, I think, David Beckham into Ultimate Team. And one of the David Beckhams that is in there, because I think they did 3 different ones from his career, one of them, everybody is like, that's Gabriel Heinze. Like, it looks just like Gabriel Heinze. It's like, it really does. Like, the screenshot looks far more like Gabriel Heinze than it does of David Beckham. So I guess that would go along with what Joe was saying. He also says, I've kind of heard mixed opinions from the people he knows about Heinze. He asked if Gustavo said anything about his feelings on it. I haven't talked to Gustavo about it yet. I seem to remember him being positive about Heinze, but I don't think we ever got into it in any detail on Soccer Over There when Gustavo was hanging out with us. So we'll probably be doing that on Monday, I would assume so. I would assume there will be some conversation about that as Soccer Over There gets you ready for the Western Conference Final on Monday night. So MLS tomorrow, MLS Monday, lots of stuff. Liga MX tonight, Liga MX tomorrow, although the game tomorrow is already 4-0 on aggregate. You probably won't waste your time. Nope. So that's it for tonight for us. Jarrett, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Saturday night show
in Columbia.
A red card in Colombia?
We have a red card in Colombia.
Nice.
Please tell me it was the other manager.
No, that was in Ecuador.
Ecuador, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I don't think the other manager's been sent off yet in Ecuador.
Oh! Oh no! Yeah, yeah. That is a red.
Are you going to give more of a description than that?
Nah, he's just going to tease.
I'm going to tease it.
All right, I'll find it and I'll tweet it out. Games at 3 tomorrow. I think kickoff is more like 3:30. It is ABC
Probably.
or ESPN Deportes. So thanks, everybody, for hanging out on a Saturday.
Yes.
Not typical on a Saturday night, but it was a good time. Loved all the questions about Gabriel Heinze and getting to dig into that a little bit more. I'm going to continue studying and learning more, trying to watch a couple of old Velas games back. So maybe I'll have some more info on what I've seen from his teams on Monday. And we'll be back on Monday with a normal show. Y'all have a good rest of the weekend. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.